Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the reunion of Final Fantasy VII Remake podcast. I am your host, Kai, and joining me once again today is my co-host, Vyzz. How are you doing, Vyzz?
Hello, everyone. I'm still a bit exhausted from reading a very special book. And finally, after what feels like months, I found time to finish it, and I'm really, really glad I did. Which book? You'll know soon.
That's awesome. So I guess it's a great time to announce right now. So we're super excited today because we do have an extra special guest here with us today. It's MJ Gallagher. Welcome.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate being here. I've actually been a fan of the show for the last year or so. I tune in for every single episode, so I'm delighted to finally
awesome.
be able to sit down and have a proper conversation with you guys. I knew about the reunion podcast before I even knew about Cosmo Canyon Observatory, so that's how popular the podcast is.
Oh wow.
So
okay,
in your face.
Oh wow, thank you so much.
So yeah, I guess I should quit CCO and start full-time the reunion podcast. Mo said it here first.
Exactly.
Listen, I'm totally okay with that. Let's split the workload here. Like you don't already have enough to do, Vyzz.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. CCO could just be community led. You could just retire from that project and come full time on the podcast.
Yeah. Just let Pulse of the live stream with Peeps, Nibbles, and Scooter
Let's
Kuma
go.
just run their thing. No one needs analysis.
Yeah, as amazing as Pulse of the live stream is, I think a witch hunt would be set out against me if you stopped making videos on my say-so.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. For sure.
Well, we're both super excited to have you here with us, MJ, and we can't wait to talk to you about your book. And I just want to remind everybody the best way to support us here is to like, sub, and share the podcast. Hop on over to our YouTube channel and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcasts, because we're available on pretty much all of them. Also, if you guys don't already know this, we are giving away a digital deluxe edition of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade to one lucky listener. So here's what you have to do. You have to go to our Twitter profile at reunion_podcast and follow us there. Retweet or quote tweet the original giveaway posting that's actually pinned to the top of our Twitter profile. And the winner will be drawn the day before Intergrade releases on June 10th. And I changed the announcement date because I realized that obviously it comes out on the 10th, so we should choose the winner the day before so it has time to download, obviously. And if people, decided to pre-order the game or whatever, they end up winning, they can cancel their pre-order. So also, I'm super excited to announce that we are also giving away a signed copy of MJ's book, Norse Myths, that inspired Final Fantasy VII. And what you have to do, it's the same exact process for our digital deluxe edition giveaway. So follow us on Twitter at reunion_podcast, retweet or quote tweet the original giveaway posting about MJ's book, and we will draw the winner in 2 weeks from today. So fingers crossed. So make sure you check out all of our socials for that as well. All right, Vyzz, so what's been going on over at Cosmo Canyon Observatory?
Quite a lot, actually. So as you might know from last episode or from my YouTube channel, that Pulse of the Livestream is a new thing. And now besides news and community news and other stuff, they also started doing a series called Assess Materia, which is basically a series of interviews. And the first interview that dropped around a week ago or so is the interview with yours truly, kind of for a kickoff and to get to know the strange purple alien a little bit better. But there are a lot more to come. So there are already a few in the pipeline. And the preview, which is for patrons only, should drop soon, I think. I need to check back about the schedule. But on our Patreon page, you'll get it at least 3 days early, the audio-only version. And then 3, 4, 5 days later or something like that, the full video version drops. Which is a little bit edited, but the most fun is, of course, just what you hear. So just listen to the video is also fine. But Rima does a really good job of editing the video with a lot of humor.
Yes.
So please check that one out. And the next news segment is also on the horizon, if I'm not mistaken, in a few days, I hope. Maybe, I don't know. Because I'm keeping myself out of the loop, because as soon as I start integrating myself, I lose more time. So I try just to let them be and be a slight consultant maybe. So that's that. But what is really important for my part is that I finally finished the script for the Gargantuan analysis on the new elements which pertain to Cloud and Sephiroth, especially to Cloud's new memory glitches and visions of the future, all the new juicy Sephiroth appearances and what everything means. So it's really, really long, probably will turn out to be over 3 hours, the whole thing. So we'll split it up into maybe 7, 8 or so parts.
Jeez, Sleepy is sitting there looking at that and laughing. 8 parts for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Sleepy is just sitting listening to this with a cigar, laughing at you for splitting it up into 8 pieces.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he's in I don't know, a really special place that it can just wait 2 to 3 months and then release a 3-hour video. I tend to try and turn out a little bit more often. So it makes a little bit more sense. And also, Rima will kill me if I told you, hey, just edit those 3.5 hours.
Right? Oh my gosh, she's doing so much. And then I'm putting her to work as well. So shout out to Rima, because she's...
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, she's working hard.
Definitely. And she's always says she's the lazy one. Well, not anymore. Yeah. No, that's about that. And also, I plan to start recording or finishing and analyzing and then recording the rough analysis of the latest intermission trailer.
Okay.
I already made a lot of notes, but I need to do more and prepare the visuals so that I can just start recording and show the thing. There's a lot to talk about.
Oh
again.
my gosh, yeah. I can't wait to hear your rough analysis video of that trailer, because it was absolutely crazy. And when I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, I just wanted to kind of pick your brains about it, which we're going to be doing on today's episode. So just going on into it here. So today we are going to be talking about that crazy Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade final trailer that was released on Thursday last week. We will also be discussing the first Soldier live stream event that happened. And that was when the final trailer was shown during that event. And also any new info or details about Intergrade or Intermission, and also the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 information that we kind of got a little bit of information from Nomura during that event. And also Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade as a PS5 exclusive. We'll see. And also we'll be discussing MJ Gallagher's book, Norse Myths, that inspired Final Fantasy VII, and his upcoming projects. But before we start our conversation about that, MJ, I just want to go ahead and ask if you could tell our listeners who you are and maybe share a little bit about your experience and background with Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm MJ Gallagher. I'm also known in the community as Mo, or originally, way back in the day, I was known on the livestream.net as S&G. So my introduction to Final Fantasy VII actually came very shortly after it was released. I eventually decided that I was going to try my hand just sort of writing fan fiction to do with it. Eventually built up some courage to sort of post it online, and it gained a little bit of traction. Years and years ago, I was part of AdventChildrenForums.net, which was actually the predecessor to the livestream.net. So I've actually been part of that community for almost 15 years now, which it sounds crazy to say, but I've been going for a long time. With regards to the fan fiction, one of the things that I took a real interest in when the compilation was off and running was a lot of the sort of Japanese only releases. So Before Crisis or the online mode of Dirge of Cerberus. And I had a lot of access at that time to people who were living in Japan and actually playing the game.
Okay.
So I sort of took a lot of notes and posted a lot of content online to do with that. And like I said, the purpose of that was really just to incorporate it into my own fan fiction. Um, but you know, I just as a sort of offshoot of that, when I started posting articles about information that I'd managed to gather, little did I know that 10 years later or whatever, it would become the sort of go-to source for an awful lot of content, specific or in particular, the Dirge of Cerberus online stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So just as a sort of indirect result of my participation within the livestream.net, I eventually sort of published a couple of volumes of my Final Fantasy VII novelisation, and was invited to the first KupaCon in the UK, which was in London back in early 2017. One of the lead organisers, Alan Kenny, had also been an active member of the livestream.net for a number of years. He and I were good friends, so he invited me down just to do some book signings, because the first volume in my novelisation was being given away as a sort of loot item to their VIP guests.
Oh, right.
Nice.
So that was sort of where everything really started to take off for me. I met an awful lot of different members in the community, got to hang out with some of the actors or voice actors who'd at that time contributed to the sort of Final Fantasy 15 universe. So the very first event that I attended was alongside Ray Chase, who's the voice of Noctis,
Right.
John Campling, who is the face of King Regis, and Liam Mulvey, who's the face and voice of Libertas. And it was a massive success, both for me personally and for the Final Fantasy community. So we kept going. Another book of mine was given away the following year at the next London event, and it was sort of round about that time I ended up in a conversation with Alan and Alex Main, the sort of the KupaCon chief, about producing a novel that was going to be, for all intents and purposes, exclusive to KupaCon, and that's where the Nibelheim incident came from. So we started working on that, and I managed to rope in sort of community artists Crimson Sun and AJ Haitley, who's one of the owners of the sort of gaming merchandise company Game Tea Limited. And we put together the Nibelheim incident, and it was within that community it was massively successful, and it sort of over time started to filter out into the wider community. And as a result of that, sort of got a wee bit of recognition, I guess, from the community for the sort of writing, the Final Fantasy VII writing that I was producing. It was popular enough that KupaCon later commissioned an audiobook version of it, which again was read by Liam Mulvey. And as sort of time went on, I started thinking that, what can I do here? All my projects were non-profit. Just it was for the joy of writing and being able to sort of produce something that we could give away, and make it accessible to anyone. And obviously we were limited by copyright anyway, but the whole joy of it for me was being able to produce something that other people might enjoy. But as time went on, and I started a family, it was sort of more difficult to justify spending all that time writing books and not actually making anything from it. So I started to turn my attentions to something that I might be able to sort of get a little bit of income from. So maybe about 10 years ago, I'd worked as a travel writer in the cruise ship industry, based out of New Zealand. And it sort of gave me the confidence to think, do you know what, I'm actually just going to go for it. I'm going to try and get myself into a position where I can, write for a living, or at least a partial income. And I thought, maybe about 18 months ago, I'd been spending a lot of time looking at mythology. I'm very interested in global mythology, and at the time, very interested specifically in Norse mythology. So I started writing some blog articles about how Norse mythology appears in the Final Fantasy series, and then sort of honed in a little bit on Final Fantasy VII, because that was where my area of knowledge lay. And the more that I wrote, the more I started to realise, hold on, there's actually enough content here to maybe produce a book. And it was like one of these light bulb moments of, okay, I'm looking for something that I might be able to produce to sort of help pay the bills. Oh look, I happen to know quite a lot about Norse mythology. I happen to know quite a lot about Final Fantasy VII. The two are connected. So yeah, screw it. I'm just going to go for it. And the next thing we know, Norse myths that inspired Final Fantasy VII come into existence. So alongside that, I've never really stopped working with KoopaCon. So one of my other recent ventures has been the Easter eggs series that I do with them, just a sort of chapter by chapter breakdown. Because I've got a pretty strong background in the actual compilation lore, there's a lot of things that I was able to point out that sort of the casual fans may have missed, and that's something that I've had tremendous joy with as well. Just I'm sure Vyzz is exactly the same, that being able, although there's a huge amount of effort and time that's involved in these things, there's also a lot of satisfaction that comes with it.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So yeah, that's basically the last year of my life has been getting the Norse myths that inspired Final Fantasy VII out into the world. I'm just working through my video series, so I'm very happy with the success of the book has been far beyond what I anticipated. I would have been grateful for a pat in the back and someone to tell me that they really enjoyed the book, but so far it's the feedback has been phenomenal, and I'm so humbled by it. And I would just like to go on and keep producing more and more.
That's really good to hear, and you earned your pat on the back. It's a really good book. I enjoyed it thoroughly, reading it through it yesterday and today.
Wow,
mostly.
You read through the whole thing in 2 days? That's amazing.
Not quite. I think I started at page 50 or so, because the introductory chapters where I go through Norse mythology and the compilation as a basis for the rest. I read that on a train ride a few weeks back, and since then I didn't have time because there was so much to do. But now, since the script was done and there was kind of a little bit of a breather this week, and I thought, well, we have you on, need to read this, and I'm glad I found the time. It was a really, really good read.
I really appreciate that. Thank you, Vyzz.
And I'm also thinking about buying the hardcore book when it's out. Is it already out?
It's not yet. We're still maybe a couple of weeks away from that being released. There's just a couple more sort of T's to cross and I's to dot. But I'm very excited about it because I've never actually seen up until last week. I've never seen a book of mine being produced in hardback, so that was really quite cool to sort of see the quality of it. And the artist Kaylee Henderson has done a phenomenal job in sort of putting this together. But the hardback copy of it it's not just a sort of 1-for-1 copy of what the paperback or what the initial release was. There's a good sort of extra 30 pages in there of just sort of behind the scenes content or extra ideas that just never made the final cut. And some of them, some of them I think are quite cool. Like talking about the connection between Aerith and the sort of CRSs of Viking myth culture, or there's a chapter which has never actually been made public anywhere before that sort of talks about all the connections between Cloud and Thor, and there are actually quite a lot, but they're all sort of fun connections rather than anything sensible, which is why it never made the book itself. But
Yeah. For example, Cloud defeating the Zolam or the Midgard Stormer.
That's one. And there's when they find, I think I did mention this in the book, that when they actually find the dead Zolam, there's that sort of flash of lightning in the background.
Oh right, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's really cool detail.
Kind of lightning is associated with Thor, who was the arch enemy of the Midgard or Midgard Storm, which is what the Zolam is based off. But there's other things as well, like the story of Thor having to dress up as a bride to get his hammer back. That's
that's really fun.
Ties really nicely into the cross-dressing series. But there are other bits and pieces that I won't go into right now, just so that I'm not spoiling it for anyone. But there's a lot of really cool fun comparisons. I actually had a lot of fun putting that one together. And there's various other bits and pieces as well. That's the ideas are there, and I think once you've read the book, you can see where the ideas have come from, but they're maybe too abstract to have had them in the main book. But it's so there's definitely more, or it makes the hardback book worth buying. And there's some early sketches and a couple of extra pieces of artwork in there as well. So it's more of a sort of collector's item, let's say.
Very exciting. Definitely getting this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you also had I think an ultra limited edition version of the Nibelheim incident, right? As well, that was available, I think, during the KupoCon event afterwards, but it had sold out multiple times, like extremely fast. So I wasn't able to get a copy of that, unfortunately.
That was really crazy, actually. I've like I sort of mentioned earlier, when we put together the Nibelheim incident, the agreement always was that the printed copies would be exclusive to KupoCon events.
Oh right.
And that was the case. One of the selling points for buying an upgraded or a VIP ticket was that sometimes it was the only way to get your hands on a copy of the book. And other times, I would be on site and we'd kind of put it together as part of a package because we could never sell it. But there was, I think just because the community became really quite enamoured by the project, and it was a sort of limited edition item, having me there to sort of give the books away or to sign the books sort of became a wee bit of an attraction, which was, for me, it was everything I ever wanted, just that recognition, I guess, of the hard work that I put into it. So I was absolutely delighted, but obviously through COVID-19, the events themselves have been postponed for the last year or so. The last one was back in February 2020, which just by pure chance happened to be in my home city of Glasgow, Scotland.
Nice.
Which is where I met John Bentley for the first time.
So it wasn't the Spyro convention.
So where did you get that, Vyzz? Jeez, yeah.
We don't talk about this.
That's a crazy idea.
Yeah.
So I met John and spent a good bit of time with John, and as it happened, KupoCon had set up a few sort of remake launch parties. They did one in Vancouver. Which did you attend that one, Kai?
I did. I went to the one in Toronto.
So, it was Toronto you went to, right? Okay, so you got to meet John there as well, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so Pontus and I went to the London one, which was, I think, like 48 hours after the Toronto event.
Yeah, it
was. Something crazy. And John flew over for that one as well. So it was absolutely brilliant to be able to spend time with him, but it was the last time we were able to sort of give the book away. So Alex and I have been discussing for quite some time how we might achieve this, and particularly because very recently we came to the end of the audiobook. So we wanted to do something that celebrated that, and the anniversary of the remake, just seemed to fit the bill. So of course, because it was going to be an anniversary event, we wanted something different. Alex decided that the best way to do that would just be a special edition version of the book. So we got AJ Haley to provide some more artwork. It was actually very closely based on the first piece she ever did for us.
Okay.
So I think the cover itself is absolutely stunning. AJ is a phenomenal artist. She used to work with Penguin Books.
Okay.
So she has a background in book cover design. And you know, when it went on sale, we had the discussion and we thought, you know what, just because rather than it being Kubicon exclusive or Kubicon community exclusive this time, it's open to the sort of wider community. We don't know how it's going to be received. A safe bet might be to sort of order 50 copies and just draw a line under it that way, just a special little item for anyone that's interested, but we don't need to do any more than that. So of course when it went on sale, it was 2 seconds it was available for. So the first 50 went in 2 seconds, which was absolutely crazy.
That's really crazy. Yeah.
Like I hadn't even typed up a tweet to put out to say, okay, now the book's on.
Yeah.
That was so fast.
Oh boy.
And the same thing when they released the second one. It was something like 10 minutes or whatever. It took for the next 50 to sell out, and they were like, right, okay, we're still in the middle of the stream. Let's just do it a third time. And that one took just over an hour to sell out. So I think by the time like Final Fan TV did the anniversary stream as well that I jumped on last minute, which Vyzz was part of. It was the first time that Vyzz and I ever got to speak to one another.
Yes.
Sort of video or audio wise. So that was literally as the guys were getting ready to hit the button to go live. I joined in. And you know, I was in such a high. Yeah, if you watch the video back, I mean, I think there was a bit of rum in my glass as well. That might have contributed, but you should be able to see me sort of riding that high for the first part of the video. It was I was so thrilled that, you know, the people had shown that level of interest, and I don't think as an artist or as a creator you can really ask for anything more than that. So I'm enormously grateful to anyone that did pick it up, because it's not, you know, at the end of the day it's just a bit of fan fiction, you know.
Yeah,
there's no getting away from that.
Still there are a lot of fans.
So I'm enormously grateful, as I say. Yeah, it was quite the experience.
Oh, I bet it was. Yeah. That now this explains why you were so chatty and funny in the first half hour or so. It was really good.
I'm
stream
not usually funny. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, thank you so much for going into detail, sharing your background about how you got started, you know, as an author. And I know Vyzz and I were both super appreciative that, you know, you are here with us today, and that you know, took the time away to be here to talk about your history, you know, about with Final Fantasy VII, and also, like I said, your history getting started with, I guess, fan fiction. I think that's so interesting, and, you know, just to look at where you've come from as well, you know, being part of the livestream.net and your background with Joseph Service Online, and getting involved with GoopleCon, and just, you know, the path that you've taken to get to where you are now here today is absolutely incredible. And, you know, over time you've kind of become this beacon in the community, you know, and now also with your YouTube content as well. You know, it's great content. It's amazing. On top of the fact that, you know, your books are incredible as well. And I know that for me, I'm just so appreciative that, you know, you are here with us, and I'm super excited to talk to you today about, you know, Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Thank you so much. That's extremely touching. I'm so glad that we're not actually on video. You'd probably see the tears in my eyes right now.
Oh.
Yeah, audio is a little bit easier to edit. So for this foreseeable future, we're going to be staying audio, because we talked about this multiple times. It's just so much extra editing, and, you know, I just don't have the time to be
Yeah.
able to do all of that. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And this is a passion project for me. So it's just, like I'm doing this, I'm like when like you said, you started out writing fan fiction and everything you're doing, it's just, you're doing it as a pastime, right? Because
Yeah.
you're passionate about the franchise, you're passionate about Final Fantasy, and you're just kind of doing it on your own time, which is essentially what I'm doing as well. And Vyzz as well, because we both have our jobs and we're both, have our day jobs. You can't quit your day job, like my grandma
Yeah,
said.
definitely. Yeah. And I'm, again, just from a listener's point of view, thank you for the efforts and the time that you put in, because it is a phenomenal show. Like I say, I've listened to every single one.
Wow, thank
for
you.
the last year, and I do look
Thank you.
forward to them. So please, as long as the passion is there, please do keep going.
Thank you so much for
Oh, we
saying
certainly
that.
will. Thank you.
And we're so glad to know that you've been enjoying it, even like the super long, ridiculous episodes where, we're just kind of, we're just constantly just rambling and spiraling out of control. And it's just so nice to know that, you listen to every single one. So
Of course.
that helps a lot.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of every single one, I for now also looked or watched every single one of your breakdowns of the individual remake
Oh, yeah.
chapters, and they're really, really good.
Thank
you.
Yeah, I learned also a lot of new details, mostly connections to compilation lore I forgot or just didn't think of, because I played through all the compilation I could. Also watched or played through the RPG Maker version of Before Crisis, which probably isn't the most ideal one, but still, in comparison to your knowledge, I'm just like a little newcomer, kind of.
I'm just ready to be schooled. I'm just ready to be like taken to school. Come on.
Yeah.
But again, I have actually been doing this for 15 years, so to be fair, I have quite the head start on you.
True. That's true.
But thank you for saying so. As I love producing these videos. It's something I would have done anyway. But I'm very grateful to Alex Main and to Kupacon for financing it. So it's
cool.
Yeah. I'm just, sometimes I have to pinch myself for actually being in this position. It has taken a lot of hard work to get here, but it certainly feels as if I'm getting somewhere.
Yeah.
That's
good to hear.
And I've literally just finished, like this afternoon, finished the script for the new one, which the first half is basically talking about the relationship between Wutai and Avalanche, and the second half is all about Kyrie. So believe it or not, there's 15 minutes of content on Kyrie.
Nice.
Oh, that's good. I still need to read this The Kids Are All Right novel.
Same.
I'm so bad at reading stuff. I keep forgetting to read it, and then day's over again, a week is over, a month is over. I still haven't read it.
Do you know what? It's a really, really good story, particularly if you're a compilation fan or just a sort of deep lore Final Fantasy VII fan. I actually personally preferred it to On the Way to a Smile. I thought it was just a far more enjoyable story. Though the only caveat to that is Nojima's writing style is quite difficult to get used to, so it does take maybe 20 pages or so to, it's very
slow start.
It doesn't like stop to give you any real detail about what's going on. It's just here's a couple of sentences, and now we're somewhere totally different. Here's another couple of sentences.
I see.
The pacing of it's really quite unique, I think. So be aware of that, but I would certainly recommend it as a good story.
Oh, for sure. I'll try to pick it up as soon as I remember and can.
Yeah.
Also, one of the weird side effects of it is towards the end of the book, I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it actually gives you a much deeper appreciation of Advent Children and how certain characters appear in Advent Children or why they're there. It's it's definitely worthwhile.
Yeah, I've heard a few details, yeah. I know a few points here and there, but not really the great picture and details of this book.
So yeah, Buy it now.
Yep.
All right, guys. So we are gonna start here to talk about the Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade final trailer that we got. So I'm just gonna go over everything, like just kind of my thoughts about this crazy trailer, because we got so much, and honestly, I wasn't expecting to get as much in this trailer. I guess like as much revealed in this trailer is what I thought that we were gonna get. It like I didn't think we were actually even gonna get like a trailer like this. I didn't know what we were gonna get, but I just wasn't expecting something like this. But obviously, you know, I don't know, Square Enix kind of likes to spoil things in their trailers. I feel that's like a pattern that they've been on for a little bit of time now. So anyway, so I'll just quickly go through what I saw. So we saw so many new things. So the first that we got was a little bit of footage of Vyzz in the VR sim, and it looks like he's attacking Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith inside the VR sim. So I'm not sure if this is VR mission confirmed, I guess we can say.
Yeah.
I think we knew it was coming from the initial trailer, that just because of the digital sort of flickering in the background. But I guess now it's shown that yes, it's almost certainly going to be, you know, the sort of chapter 17
hard mode,
and you know, even the few seconds that we got of him, he looks incredible.
Yeah, he does.
He looks badass.
Yeah, and he does crazy high damage. Like, because you can see the damage numbers, right? Like after
6K, 6.5K or something.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna get schooled. I'm gonna have to practice, because I'm just not gonna be able to beat him. I know it's gonna take me so long. But I'm up to the challenge. It's okay, you know. I've played those Soulsborne games, and I'm just in preparation for this very moment.
I think we're all just going to have to just watch Baby Seal do it.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Learn from him.
Yeah, I'll just have to watch those, just like for strategies and builds, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, it's only a matter of time before Baby Seal has a video out about how to beat Vyzz with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Shout out to Baby Seal.
In 1 minute or something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then also we got, I think, some new Sephiroth dialogue. I don't know if there was this, I read this online somewhere. I think it was on Twitter. Is this a new line? Cloud, lend me your strength. Let us defy destiny.
No, this is the line from the Edge of
That's
Creation.
what I thought.
Just taken into
but
this.
Somebody did say that there was some new dialogue that they heard in the trailer. So I don't know if that was added just for the trailer or if it's actually going to be in Intergrade or not. But anyway, maybe it's just a rumor.
It definitely raises the question of whether or not we are going to see any new cutscenes or hear any new dialogue that's been re-recorded. It's certainly. I think I'm with you that I didn't recognise the line straight away, but it definitely got me thinking. You know, there's absolutely every chance that they're going to start throwing in little.
Yeah.
You know, there's something in particular. I won't go into what it is just now, but in chapter 14, there is a suspicious lack of dialogue from some of the NPCs.
Okay.
And I personally would like to see in some of those segments of the game, it's very possible that it was just to do with limitations on development time or whatnot, that they were never included.
Maybe, yeah.
So I would maybe like to see some of that fleshed out a bit. And if they don't do it, it sort of confirms a little theory that I have about.
Okay.
Basically, in chapter 14. When you leave Aerith's house, and for the entirety of chapter 14, no matter how many side quests you do or whatever, every time you return to the Leaf House, nobody speaks to you. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Don't
I
remember that.
mean, not one single teacher or kid has any lines of dialogue.
Wow. I think I remember that happening, but I didn't notice it as much as until you just said that.
So that seems a bit suspicious based on who or what may be in the second floor at that time.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Interesting.
I wonder if that was just a limitation or if that's actually deliberate.
Oh, okay.
So maybe Intergrade will answer that one for us.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they do go back to put more dialogue in certain areas, or recording extra lines to put in to change it
Hmm.
up. I'm not sure, just to give maybe more information in the scenes even. But I guess we don't have that much longer to see. But I don't know where. I think it was just a rumor about the extra Sephiroth dialogue, but I saw it on Twitter. I don't know who posted it, but it did sound like it was new. I couldn't remember hearing it in the game. So
I could also see this line being spoken in his first long dialogue with Cloud in Sector 8. I think he also says something, lend me your
right,
strength. But I'm not 100% sure because I'm bad at remembering
same.
exact
I
lines.
think that Let Us Defy Destiny together is right at the end of the game. It's definitely chapter 18.
Right.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
But just very quickly, I think this would be a good opportunity to include new NPC lines that would assist in tying the intermission story into the game.
Oh,
Oh,
So
yeah.
you know, for having NPCs in the main story referencing events and intermission,
That would be good. Cool, really cool, yeah.
that would make sense.
Yeah, also ex-soldier on the livestream.net created and published a really good article about how he believes that many things have been cut, especially from chapter 16 and 17, or that they didn't have the time for many things and just made it look like this was meant to be, especially considering that the NPCs in chapter 16 had so many lines, like actual duplicate lines from chapter 14, from Slum Citizens.
Yeah.
The same ones in Shinra HQ,
Oh,
you
okay.
walk past, have the same lines.
Hmm.
It just copy pasted it because time, yeah, probably deadlines, time
Well,
restrictions.
obviously they had to push the game back a month originally.
Yeah, they did.
Which we all assumed was in relation to sort of what was going on in Asia at the time. But
Yeah.
you know, as very possible that these were the last things just to get thrown in there. So with a little bit of luck, there will be some small changes that are made through Intergrade, which I for one, and I can't wait. And you know, as soon as the idea crossed my mind, Vyzz, you were the one that I thought of if anyone's going to create a video pointing out the differences between Remake and Intergrade, it'll be you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I see their differences, I'm certainly going on a scavenger hunt for more.
I think that's really interesting actually that you said, you know, they could potentially go back and add things in for the continuity of, you know, Intergrade and going into intermission. I think that's super interesting. I think it would be super cool actually for them to do that. And then as we're going through the story, we're hearing things potentially about, you know, people maybe seeing this hooded, you know, girl or something, you know, just stuff like that. So it feels like, yes, it's happening concurrently during the story of Intergrade when we're playing through it. I didn't finish my hard playthrough of Remake because I was waiting to get a PS5. I haven't been able to get one yet. I don't have much longer. I'm hoping there'll be a drop soon. I'm honestly, I've got the money. I'm ready to just hit, you know, check out. I'm ready. And I just can't wait for this to come out. And when I go back to play it again, I'm going to have kind of like, I'll be more attuned to looking for that kind of thing now that we've, you know, talked about it. And I'm going to replay it beginning to end. And I think, I hope they do that, because I think it would add another element to it of just, you know, being genuine and the continuity there. And I think that's a great opportunity for them to do that. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Or maybe playable Red 13. Probably not.
We've talked about this before, but I just find it so... For me, it's a little strange that we're actually going to get to play as Yuffie before Red 13, because we didn't get to play as her until after. So for me, I think it's strange because it's not going to feel like... I mean, this game didn't feel like playing the original anyway, because it's not the original, but you know what I mean? When you're playing it and the events do happen quite in the same order as what they do in the original at the beginning of the game, and then things kind of diverge later and there's added things make it like different, right? But I think that it's kind of crazy that we're going to be able to play as Yuffie. It does make sense in the aspect of like what they're trying to do with the story of intermission and the and this mission is happening concurrently, like with the remake story. I think that's cool, but I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it's crazy that we're gonna play as Yuffie before we get to play as Nanaki. I just feel like it's a little strange, but I'm excited. I don't really care. I just feel like it's different, you know? It's not gonna feel the same.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. But I just totally off at a tangent. I still love that little story about the battle mechanics developer and the materia in Nanaki's collar.
Oh, yeah.
It's so funny. they had to keep it in. So, you know, you've just got that bit of lore or the kind of little story issue of why the hell does that beast have materia in a cell?
Yeah.
It's just, but this is the whole
in a hairpin makes
the
no
whole
sense.
story
Yeah,
behind it. It's
exactly.
really funny.
All right, so moving on to the next thing here in the trailer. So there's something that's called Wutai's famous Dachau beans that I don't know what they are or what they do. They kind of look a little bit like coffee beans, but they're larger. I don't know. Anyway, so Yuffie hands them to Poke and Billy Bob, and it looks like GJ's there as well in the trailer. So she kind of hands it to them, and I don't know if they eat them. I don't know what they do. I feel like we could do a separate episode just talking about these beans and what
for
they
sure,
do.
yeah.
So I don't know if you guys want to tell me what you think they do, if anything, or what their purpose
I
are.
think Wutai are pulling a fast one here, and they're actually tracking devices.
Oh, okay.
Hot take.
Interesting.
And that's how Yuffie knows they all die in the Sector 7 collapse, because the signal goes out.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's actually a really cool idea.
I've actually just thought of that there and then. That was far too morbid, so I'm sorry about that.
That's fine.
That's interesting, actually. I could see them doing that. Absolutely. I'm not sure what they are myself. Maybe she's trying to poison them all or something. But why would she do that? That doesn't make any sense. Maybe there's something.
Make him high.
Yeah. Maybe there's something inside that just makes them
I wonder
like,
if it's
drowsy or
like
something.
you know in Lord of the Rings the elfin bread, lambus bread. You know, you take a little bite of it, but it totally fills you. I wonder if it's maybe like a military thing for Wutai.
Yeah, it also reminded me of those magic beans in Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball itself.
Okay.
I think it's before that too. Yeah, because you eat one bean and then you're like full health and filled up and you feel great again. But if you eat two or more or something that you feel like stuffed for hours and it's no good.
Interesting. Maybe it's a consumable that she just has that you can eat that does that, like during the gameplay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just
Full
a
health.
way for them to kind of integrate it into the story, I guess. So it shows her kind of like giving them out. And then when you're in battle, it's just a consumable. She can eat it so you know what it is. But anyway, I don't know.
And maybe if it's giving you full health, and maybe that's why they survive Platefall still, but Yuffie doesn't know that.
It's basically an elixir that.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
That's super interesting, guys. Wow. Well, I guess we'll find out not too much longer. So this game's coming out in a month. So, but yeah, I remember watching it and I'm like, I wonder, it's like they took time to show us that, you know, they focused on it.
Yeah.
There has to be some kind of importance to it. I just don't think it's kind of like a throwaway thing.
Definitely.
So,
surely they would not have called them the chow beans if it was a throwaway thing as well, you know? Like, this is such a specific reference.
Yeah.
Maybe it's also on the level of the Cosmo Canyon drink that Tifa makes Cloud. This is also pretty much in focus.
Yeah.
Or it's also meant to kind of like a welcoming gift.
Oh, okay.
To warm them up to her or something. I don't know.
Maybe it's like a lucky charm. It's not even that they have to eat it. Maybe it's some
or that
kind of like maybe it's like a customary thing that when it's like you meet somebody new, like somebody that's not from Wutai, maybe it's customary to give them this, and it's kind of like a special token of friendship or something. Like, I don't know. I'm just kind of grasping at straws here, whatever. But I'm just thinking maybe it's not even that they eat it, because it doesn't show them eat it. It kind of cuts away, so it looks like they're looking at it in their hand. So I don't know. It could be just kind of like some kind of a memento or something like that.
Yeah, you know what? I hadn't even crossed my mind. I hadn't paid much attention to it. I can't believe we spent 10 times as much time on this than we did on the Vyzz section.
Yeah.
That's okay,
Yeah.
though. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, no one else is coming up with this content. Why not?
Yeah, sure.
But I think they already came out and said that Vyzz is not going to be in the story, right, of Intermission. So I feel like
He won't be the boss, the final boss.
right.
That's for
So
sure.
maybe they see him underground
pretty
or
sure, yeah.
encounter him, but then they don't fight him. But he is a VR sim mission. But I haven't seen anything to kind of show that, to give me the assumption that he's going to be like a big part of the story. You know what I mean? Because from what they've shown, they haven't shown anything other than what looks like Vyzz as a VR sim. So,
But again, we're assuming that the whole reason that he's in VR is the connection to do with his SND abilities, which
Yeah.
means that anywhere in the Shinra facility, if there's a monitor somewhere, there's no reason that he wouldn't be able to broadcast himself onto the
okay.
monitor. So you might
Makes sense.
you might see that's where he's introduced, and then it cuts to his
Oh.
throne room, so that he would appear in a cutscene. In particular, we've had this conversation before that Nero was quite far down the list of the possible Spheits that would actually show up. So the only one that was lower down was Rosso.
right.
So if Nero's there's no reason, technically speaking, that all 5 of them could show up.
Yeah.
In which case,
I'm actually hoping
yeah,
for that.
and,
Yeah.
and I think going back to the conversation you guys had at the weekend with Baby Seal and Sleep Easy and Sector 6 Gaming, I also agree with the idea that as much as Square Enix have shown quite a lot of footage and they have spoiled some things, there's no way that they've shown everything, which means that whatever the twist is, it's even bigger than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So and there are very few things that it could be. Kate Seth's one of them, Genesis is one of them, all 5 Spheits is one of them. So I think by showing Nero, the same way that previously by showing Vyzz, it meant anything's on the table. By showing Nero, like everything's on the table.
For sure, because he's actually in Sleepy's video, he said it or claimed that Nero is probably the least likely because he's completely chained up and can't do anything at that point.
Well, I would argue that that's not quite right, and mainly because he is chained up, and his darkness is when he's got his sort of straitjacket on. The point of the straitjacket is it contains his darkness, but if you remove the straitjacket or he manages to get his arms out, he can create a portal for himself using the darkness, which is how he manages to appear in the trailer here. Rosso, on the other hand, is very closely watched because she's crazy. Like she can't distinguish from friend or foe. She just kills everyone. Which creates a problem for those people that are watching her on Deep Ground. There's also a line about back in the original Dirge of Cerberus where Rosso says, this is the first time I've actually seen the sky, which suggests that she's never actually left Deep Ground. I'm pretty sure where this is, where Nero and Scarlet have appeared, is not actually Deep Ground. I think it's just one of the basement levels contained within the central pillar.
Okay.
So
Scarlet for sure, yeah. Nero, not 100% sure yet, but Nero appears definitely after Scarlet, so he's deeper down, I presume.
It's very possible that they have actually gone into Deep Ground, but my personal theory on this one is that they don't go to Deep Ground. It's Deep Ground comes to them.
Or that, yeah, sure. It's also possible. Although the dome they're in front of at the end of the first and at the beginning of the second trailer kind of does look like the dome in Mako Reactor number 0, where Vincent enters to then descend eventually descend to Vyzz.
It's definitely possible, but it could also just be a dome. So
for sure, yeah. Of course.
At the moment, I think everything's on the table. But I think
that's true.
definitely the Scarlet one is that the actual location is given in chapter 16 of Remake.
Yeah.
So it's
B13.
B13. So yeah, I would be very surprised. And the Turks are at B3, which suggests that B13 is not actually in or kind of subterranean levels
Probably
yet. So
not, no.
that's my take, and I interpret this as Nero showing up in the materia facility, because what Yuffie's after is the materia. So it wouldn't make any in my opinion, it wouldn't make any sense for her to go to the materia facility and then go even further down into Deep Ground. I think it would make more sense that Deep Ground came and acted as basically a security guard for Scarlet's facility, and somehow Nero appears there, which would also explain why perhaps some of the other Spheits are not there, if that's the case, if it turns out that the Spheits aren't there. But again, everything's on the table just now, so
it's really, really hard to predict such details.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's what I was going to say. Now that they've shown Nero and like everything they showed, it just seems that anything is on the table right now, you know, and there are things that they aren't showing us on purpose. And I totally agree with you. They did show a lot of people online. It was kind of, I feel like it was a little divisive, I guess, because people were like, they felt like it was really spoilery, the trailer. So they didn't really want to watch it because they showed a lot of stuff. But I believe that there's a lot more that they haven't shown, and I'm okay with it. Like I watched it multiple times. But yeah, I just think that, like you said, it could be that, you know, this isn't deep ground, you know, they haven't reached it. And it kind of looks like Nero's broken out, and I don't know what is up with that, but maybe he's out and the rest of them are still locked up, you know, like
yeah, well, he's the only one that would be able to travel out of Deep Ground without passing through a gateway.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me anyway, that he's broken out and he's on the loose. That's what it looked like to me, and they can't contain him, and then somehow encounters the party, or he's out there looking for them even, you know, and then there's a boss battle. Like, what do you guys think? Do you think we're gonna get a boss battle for each member of the Spheits, or like, what do you? That would be insane.
That would be insane.
That would be.
Yeah.
I think they've already shown us 3 bosses, so I think 3 bosses over what is allegedly 2 chapters is pretty hardcore anyway. And as we've discussed, we haven't even seen how intermission ends, so there's very likely going to be a 4th boss as well.
Most likely, yeah.
So I personally would actually be really surprised if you have to fight all the Spheits. I think it's very possible that we'll see them. I think it's very possible that they will all appear in the VR.
Yeah, I was going to say that earlier, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because Vyzz is then the last one, and the others come before him.
Yeah, and even just by definition, you know, what Nomura has said is that Vyzz is not the last boss battle.
Yeah.
In intermission, and if you look at what's going on in the actual VR mission, where you've got Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith fighting Vyzz, it suggests that you're not going to have Yuffie and Sonon fighting Vyzz in the main story, because he's powerful enough that you need your 3 characters, you know, one of which is an ex-soldier to do it, or an alleged ex-soldier to do it.
Yeah.
So if you follow that logic, you don't fight Vyzz in intermission. So if you don't fight Vyzz, there's no real reason to fight the others.
Oh, okay.
That's my logic on it. But
besides Nero, who wakes up and then just goes where the disturbance is.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says something to like of who dares to disturb my sleep or something. I don't know.
Absolutely.
That makes
I don't remember.
And there's no reason that he can't just disappear as quickly as he appeared and just bugger off back to Deep Ground again.
Who dares disturb my sleep? I think you're talking about Diablos, but
yeah, I know. I remembered that audition line as well, but it was something similar.
But I think it's amazing that they have introduced it. I personally love this side of the story. It is pretty crazy, but it is um I love the Dirge of Cerberus lore, and I'm so glad that they've included it. But I do hope that it's self-contained. I do hope that by the end of intermission, like the Dirge of Cerberus story has gone back to bed, because there's no real reason to have it anywhere else in Remake.
That is true. And I'm pretty sure they do it here in a separate DLC, because one of my theories is that when the Remake project ends, story-wise, the complete Final Fantasy VII story ends as well. So no more Advent Children, no more Dirge of Cerberus. The story is ended, done.
Yeah.
And that's why they had to kind of integrate Advent Children stuff here already.
Yeah.
Dirge of Cerberus mostly in the DLC now. And yeah, that's it. And the rest, Crisis Core Before Crisis acts as a basis, a foundation to interject everywhere where it makes sense. For example, in Chapter 1, where they reference the attempted murder of the president.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think there's an enormous amount of content from Before Crisis they can inject, just not necessarily the Avalanche stuff, because every single chapter in Before Crisis, it tells a little story about characters that we have already met.
True.
So there's plenty of things that they can expand on, to sort of tell Before Crisis through a different medium. More like a kind of flashback medium, or even just the little references. Exactly as the one that you've just pointed out. And I personally hope that Sleep Easy's theory is right, because I think it's phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
So
especially regarding Rufus.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Well, the Rufus one is almost certainly true. I mean how intermission finishes and how it ties into chapter 17. So if you haven't already watched Sleep Easy's video, I would recommend that you go and do so as soon as you possibly can. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Just make sure you have 3 hours of free time.
You can go watch it after you've listened to this episode as well, which is probably going to be 3 hours.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with you, MJ. I think that also we had Baby Seal on our last episode, and we discussed this as well, how this is probably going to be contained within intermission, because like there's not enough time that is going to be allotted to be given to all of these characters to be able to have all of these story arcs like happening at concurrently, like at the same time, and for all of them to be, like to have a payoff in the end. I think that you're right. I think that this is contained within intermission, and then essentially later in the subsequent parts we might get references to events that happened during this mission, to kind of like call back to the specific time. Also, we're getting Ever Crisis, which obviously we're going to have Dirge of Cerberus story retold in that game, redone. We don't know what the combat's going to look like. We don't know we don't know what it is. We just know it's going to be on mobile for the time being. And I think that it's important for them to kind of introduce these characters now, because I think they do have something to add to the story of Remake. That obviously, yes, it's the same story, but they're going with a different direction. So if people go from playing, Intergrade and Intermission to playing Ever Crisis, they're going to know these characters already, because they would have been introduced to them in Intermission. Yeah. And I'm talking about people who probably didn't play the compilation games, or people who are new to Final Fantasy VII as a series even, because, if you haven't played Dirge of Cerberus and these, or even just 7, your first Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy VII Remake, you're not going to really know who these characters are, but at least you have Ever Crisis coming out, which will allow for the opportunity for these people to, get even more story and lore behind these characters. And they're easily identifiable, and they would have been presented them in intermission. So I think it's smart. I think it's smart, and I think that you're right. I think that it's going to be contained within intermission, and we might get, like I said, some kind of callback later in the story, whether it's NPCs talking about them, other characters. I don't know, Yuffie potentially saying something about it. I don't think that these characters are going to show up and be given these huge story arcs like later in the remake series.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see that. I don't think there's enough time.
Yeah, there's already enough. There's already enough here for the base story to be retold and expanded upon. So
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, so our next thing here in the trailer that was revealed was a Fort Condor minigame confirmed. So we kind of deliberated on our last episode with Baby Seal about, what is this? Could it be a minigame? Could it be, that it was just kind of like this underground board game? And because they did explicitly say in the description, I think for Poke, that it was like this underground, it's becoming more popular in the underground parts of Avalanche, I guess, and Midgar.
yeah, in the undercity of Midgar, yeah.
Yeah. So I was so excited for this. I thought it looked really good and really cool. Obviously there was an outcry online because everybody was like, oh, they're just replacing Fort Condor in the story and whatever. And we we don't know that right now. But what we do know is that we're getting this minigame, and I think it's an improvement. I liked the original, but I feel like it looks like they really went there with, like fleshing it out more, and just it looks cool. I think it looks refreshed. I think it looks amazing. I'm actually really excited to, get to experience this and play this minigame. Whether it has something to do with the story or not is to be seen. I hope it does, because I hope they take the opportunity now to introduce Fort Condor, and eventually I think it's still going to be a plot point. I think we're still going to go there, but it might be that events play out, but we don't, like, when we get there, we don't control the units. We don't play the minigame when we get to Fort Condor because we've already played it.
Yeah.
So I feel like there might be like a cutscene that happens that's applicable to, the story, and while we're there or something. I don't know if it's going to be removed or not. I hope not. I think it has value to the story. If there is a part of the story that is removed, like Baby Seal had said, I agree, this would be the one to cut. But there are people who did really love this location, and I hope it stays.
It's a really interesting location as well. So.
Yeah. I would be extremely surprised if they cut it. It makes sense that they have changed the minigame element of it, because obviously the original game. Well, first of all, when you pass Fort Condor, it's actually optional the first time around. So I wonder if it's actually going to be optional here as well in Remake. Second of all, the actual minigame doesn't make any sense from when you sort of introduce the realism that the Remake has. So to actually have the minigame separate, where you still get to play that little game, but you're not. It's not sort of interwoven into the story of what Fort Condor actually is. It would be great if when you arrive at Fort Condor, you're actually joining in with Cloud and Barrett and Tifa and the rest of them actually running out to battle some mechs, rather than just giving commands to some machinery. So, and I think there's in terms of what has been introduced already and the depths of story that have already been introduced, Fort Condor's it's an enormous one for the whole setting the scene of freedom fighters and getting maybe addressing the terrorism side of Avalanche, and here's people that are actually putting up a stand against Shinra, but they're not doing it in an enormously violent way, or a way that affects the lives of citizens. They're doing it in a way that you're fighting what's right. You're fighting for the freedom of the planet. You're fighting for the literally the health of the Condor, but you're not. It's not terrorism as such. So it might play into the Barrett's journey in particular of stepping back from the extremism side.
It's actually a really good point. Yeah. Also, another thought I had, I think I mentioned this on Saturday's stream with Baby Seal and the rest, that I can see Yuffie joining the group there, not just in some random tree forest area or something, but actually be part, that's the Fort Condor part, is her introduction in part 2.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
There's also a very good chance that she'll join in Calm as well, because the original story, the sort of the very very early version, actually had you were able to find the way that it was planned was that you would find bounty
wanted posters,
wanted posters, and whatever the wanted posters would give you, like what rank she was at, like her HP or all that sort of stuff, and whatever the last wanted poster you found was, that was going to be her stats when you fought her. So
I remember that. Yeah,
and in the very early version of the game, like the first time that you would encounter Yuffie would actually be after Calm. So they might go down that route, particularly if she's already been introduced in Intermission. There's not really any reason why you would leave her out from there on in, because there's not a massive amount of development story-wise that occurs between Calm and Fort Condor.
That's true, yeah.
So you may as well just introduce her to the party there and then, if players have already had access to her during Intermission. But
although my argument would be that I think the player needs a little bit more time to focus on Red 13 first, before we get yet another new character.
Yeah, that's it.
Although we get to experience her combat in Intermission already, so maybe this argument falls flat, but still, I personally would love to have her join after the Mithril Mines. And one other reason is Calm and the Mithril Mine have connections, because you can buy the Mithril sabers and fists and bangles, whatever, there in Calm. So you could tie this to a bit of new lore, and maybe you need to there's one mandatory quest in the Mithril Mines to clear it out of some dragon or what have you. Just help the miners there. Maybe there's a mining minigame where you can mine stuff. Just gets the world building a little bit more going in between.
Yeah.
And there's also chocobos. Learn how to chocobo, so to speak. There's Midgar Solemn or Midgar Sormer. I really hope they change the name.
Yeah, me too. If they don't, I'm going to riot.
Yeah. Now, I think there's enough they could do and expand upon before we get Yuffie in or around Fort Condor.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be mad if they let her join earlier. So that's not my issue.
Yeah, I think you're right that to be able to give the party a bit more time to get to know each other with Nanaki before throwing Yuffie into the mix. I think you're right. But who knows?
Yeah.
Again, everything's on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Genesis and Calm, all that stuff.
Yeah. Or Elfie.
Yeah.
Just a random NPC. Nobody knows except the hardcore fans.
Yeah. I really hope that by the time you reach Cosmo Canyon, that's where Elfie and Verdo are. But...
Or maybe is it known where they are hiding out?
No.
I don't remember.
No, they're on the move, quite a lot.
Yeah, it's confidential.
Yeah.
I think only Rufus, Scarlet, Song, of course, know.
Scarlet doesn't know.
I think
it's only Rufus.
I think I read somewhere that she also knows that they're still alive. Not where they are, maybe, but that they're still alive.
Scarlet was not.
Maybe I'm misinformed.
Yes, Scarlet was trying to kill him. So.
I see. Okay.
So they're specifically hiding it from Scarlet.
Okay, okay. Oh, maybe that's why I mixed it up. I read something and maybe was too tired to commit it correctly to memory, and now I'm making a fool out of myself. I really need to watch Before Crisis again,
Yeah.
like the YouTube videos with the English translation.
That's it. Back to school, Vyzz.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so we talked a lot about Fort Condor. Anything else to add about Fort Condor, the minigame? I think it looks awesome. I can't wait to play it. And I did kind of go into a little bit more detail. It looks like you could see elite shock troopers, sweeper, armored shock trooper on the map, and then it looks like there's ATB bars. Kind of shows that there's different types of, I guess, like units. So we've got like a ranged unit or a tank, like defense unit, melee unit, or something like that. I don't know if that's what you got from it, Vyzz.
So from I don't have screen right now in front of me, but from what I remember is you have the same 3 types. Like it's the same rock paper scissors principle as in the original.
Right.
You have the defenders, the attackers, and the ranged ones. And in the middle, in the UI, you see the circle of those 3, like which is good against which. So you know about the weakness and strengths. But what's new is, like you mentioned, the ATB bar. Seems like both sides have 8 ATB units, which slowly fill, and each unit you can summon to the field has a certain number, like 2 or 5, which probably means you
Right.
have 5 ATB bars to summon this unit instead of buying it with Gil.
Oh, okay.
And what's completely new is additional spells. Like you have this
Yeah.
cursor, this square cursor you can freely move around, and then you can also cast one of those magic spells at
Okay.
at this location your cursor is, and then in the trailer it casts, I think, poison on the enemy
Mm.
on a sledgeworm.
Okay.
So you can or was it regen, poison, barrier, and there was a fourth icon. Probably something like repair or heal, but it wasn't in the
Yeah,
list that popped up.
it was like a heart with a plus sign
Yeah,
on it.
exactly. Yeah.
I put healing. I wasn't sure what that was, but
Yeah, it's probably healing and repair.
like restore, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what else was there? All right, there are actually 3 tower units you must defend. There's a central Condor and 2 little ones on the side.
Yeah.
Which makes things interesting because there's not just one target, but multiple targets, and one's a strong one and 2 probably lesser targets. I'm really interested in how this turns out. Also, it looks like it's a 1v1. Of course, you against the computer. But what about online mode? Because it's easy to just make this into an online multiplayer 1v1
Yeah,
bout.
that would be cool.
Have you checked any of the the PlayStation 5 advertisements to see whether or not it is online capable?
I'm not sure if it's available. Oh, it should say that on the PSN store, I think.
I'm not sure.
I don't remember seeing that,
PlayStation
but I've
Store.
only looked at it once, so and I wasn't looking for that, so
Yeah, same.
Somebody online was saying that they're like Square Enix is probably going to release like a mobile version of this, or like a separate game of this that you can download potentially.
Yeah, maybe an exact copy and an online with online functionality. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but not in, intermission. It's not, but
it would feel weird. It would be cool, but in a DLC you have a minigame which you can play online. It's kind of
on a
feels
separate
disconnected,
device.
yeah.
Well, I think that it looks awesome. I'm super excited to play this, and I think it looks incredible. I think that it's really given it's been given, the time and attention that it and the care that it needed, and I think it's refreshed. I think it looks awesome. So I can't wait to play this again, and like seeing the specific units like on the battlefield as well, because it's actually enemy units, right? Because in the original it was like these octagonal like triangle things. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
your blue soldier units.
they were just different colors.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
They looked like garden gnomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
good that it's like they actually have these, enemy units. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's Shinra units against Shinra units.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
this kind of chips away at my theory that it's actually a game produced by Avalanche
Yeah.
and distributed by Avalanche to
Okay.
make awareness of what's going on there.
Or
But
it's a meta thing about Rufus being in charge.
oh, good
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Maybe it's made by Shinra and it's been purposefully fed to the underground because they knew that it was gonna
Mhm.
kind of become popular and they want to manipulate people. I don't know.
Yeah, or just desensitize them again
Yeah.
against
Yeah.
this war in Fort Condor, that it's just a
Yes.
normal thing you play.
That they know is going to happen. Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's like preparing those people so they're like desensitized or something.
Yeah.
Or preparing them for that moment, but it's just going to be, it's not going to be, I don't know. Anyway, I think that there's something that's going to play into the story here, whether it's like this strategy, because Pogue's character description, it does state that he's one for these strategies. He's interested in developing strategies. I think that Yuffie is probably going to be like, she's going to remember doing this and coming up with some kind of strategy and potentially help the party when they get to Fort Condor and they actually have to fight in this way. She might have some kind of strategy because she would have experienced this and played this or something. I don't know.
I'd like that. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So next up is actually there's a flashback that shows one of Scarlet's machines actually attacking Wutai, and it's killing Sonan's sister. Melfi is her name.
Yep.
She looks similar to Yuffie. People on Twitter were freaking out saying that it's Yuffie, but
No, it's not. But she does. She has a lot of similarities. Yeah.
I actually saw someone claim earlier that it was Yuffie's mum, which technically speaking would work timeline wise if it happened at the beginning of the war.
But Sonon is not that old, I think. Maybe, I don't know.
The start of the Wutai War was 15 years ago, and Yuffie's 16 at the time. So, I don't think it's quite true. In On the Way to a Smile episode, Yuffie, they do actually tell you what Yuffie's mum died of, and I can't off the top of my head remember what it is.
Okay.
But I mean, it
Bummer,
could just be a lie that she told, that actually Sonon is her uncle.
Oh.
And she has to kill him at the end. That would be crazy. So
yeah,
here,
definitely.
Here we are back in the morbid talk, but
yeah,
this is what happens.
Yeah, it's not impossible. I don't think it's true, but it's not impossible that she is actually Yuffie's mum, because Sonon did work under Godo or train under Godo, so he would have every reason to know Godo's wife. So, or maybe that's the connection. But
maybe, yeah. But it must have been at the very, very start of the war, because Melfi looks around the same age as Yuffie, like 16 or so.
So
she looks really young.
Yeah, it would have to be a very young mother being killed very early in the war for it to work. But
it's a long stretch, but it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, so there you go for all the fan fiction writers out there. There's some material for you.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Yeah. But what's very interesting about this scene, actually, three things. One cool thing is that the weapon of Scarlet is actually the prototype we fight in chapter 5. It is, yep, the Crab Warden. It's the exact same model.
Is it really?
Yep.
I didn't notice that. Yeah.
It's that. It uses Motra magic, or at least looks like Motra magic. And Melfi has this pinwheel, hairpin, and the pinwheel on her back, on the jacket. Okay. So this means something. Interesting is that Yuffie's choke weapon is also pinwheel, but it probably has a deeper meaning in Wutai or some Asian or Japanese reference.
Well, there's someone on Twitter yesterday actually gave me the answer to this.
Okay.
And it's to do with the pinwheel in Japan represents cycle of life, in particular.
Oh, I think I read that. Yeah.
So I knew nothing about this, but the pinwheel is quite often associated with the Buddhist god Jizo, who is in addition very closely associated with the death of children. And Jizo or Jizo, apologies for the pronunciation there. I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced, but the idea is that he is there to protect the children that have passed and to help guide their souls. So we're in a situation where our Jizo as well is quite often also shown with a polearm. So we've got Sonon's younger sister dying. She's got the pinwheel, he's got the polearm, and the kind of common motif in Japan is this Buddhist god Jizo, who's associated with both. So that was that's an explanation that was given to me yesterday, which prior to that I knew nothing about this. So it's
same.
So if I've got any of the details wrong there, apologies. But that was I found that really quite interesting. So it is possible that the pinwheel has a wider connotation in the lore of Final Fantasy VII, but it might actually just be
a reference to that.
Yeah, it's kind of symbolism, particularly for the Japanese audience of this. She is a young woman or close to a child who has died before her time.
Yeah, that's probably the most likely, I suppose. Yeah. It's the cycle of life, you said, right?
Yeah, the pinwheel is associated with the cycle of life.
Cycle of life. This means death and rebirth. And what's also interesting is that her death happens at exactly the same spot where Zack survives. Like, it's exactly the same level design all around. And you see Midgar in the back in one shot.
Wow.
So she dies and Zack later survives. So this was also one of my hot takes last Saturday, that since Zack is now alive, she had to die or something. Like this interconnected fate stuff.
Wow.
Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. But this is just a spitballing again.
Yeah, it's massively interesting though.
I think that she does look similar to Yuffie. I think that was done on purpose because they gave us time to show us this scene, and then in the previous trailer, I think that we hear Sonon say something about her being his sister, and then she says, "I'm not your sister."
Yeah.
So I think that gives more context to, I guess, this tragedy that he's had to endure, and now he's probably been paired up with Yuffie on this mission, and who knows if he's kind of been a mentor to her in Wutai previously to this or whatever, and maybe he sees a lot of his sister in her, so maybe he calls her his sister, but she's not, and she, wants to be independent. She doesn't want to have to go with somebody else, right? I'm not sure. I'm just trying to
I think it's from a storytelling perspective, I think it's a very good way of creating conflict between Sonon and Yuffie before maybe later in the story there's actual genuine conflict. But if you've already sowed the seeds of they're not quite in the same wavelength, it's much easier to deal with later on.
Exactly. Maybe she says something to him and she regrets, and maybe, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, maybe he ends up dying at the end and she really regrets because she, actually really cared about him, but she lost her temper and says something, and now she can't, apologize for what she said. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? But anyway, I think that it's important because they did take time to show us that scene. And in the previous trailer, we hear them talking about she's denying being a sister. So I think that element's going to be there. I think they're going to they're going to show us a lot more about that, hopefully, in the game once we play it. The background there and the conflict between them, maybe.
Yeah. Or there's also the possibility that part of their mission is that they have the opportunity to stop the mechanism that brings down the plate, but he's so driven by rage that he
Oh,
misses the window, which is why she falls to her knees screaming. That she could have stopped it, but Sonon caused them not to.
that makes sense. And maybe he knows that Scarlet, I guess her machine obviously is responsible for the death of his sisters. So then he's enraged and, like you said, is kind of distracted and lets rage take over and his revenge or whatever. And then he ends up dying and causing all of this. And because I guess he's selfish for that one moment because he wants, revenge for
Yeah.
Melfi's death, even because it does show them with the boss battle with Scarlet, and she's in this mech unit and she's fighting them inside of it, and which is super cool, by the way, which is the next thing we're going to talk about here. So who knows? Like that, I feel that adds so much detail and layers there to the story. I think it's going to be heartbreaking from what we see in the trailer. I don't know, but it already, for me, I was like a little disturbed. But just watching the end, I was like, oh my God, like it sounds like it's going to be devastating. So,
By the way, this scene heavily reminds me of Zack's death, like Cloud's reaction. He also has this blood splotches in his face, and sits or kneels kind of the same, and also cries into the heavens, similar to Yuffie.
Yeah, somebody did a side-by-side. On Twitter, I watched somebody actually did a side-by-side of both, and it looked so similar.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, wow, it's, that when they're making this, they're like trying to do this, right? So they're adding these elements in as callbacks to, other parts of the franchise. So let's talk a little bit, I guess, about the Scarlet Battle Armor mech suit because for me, I was like, what? I was so excited for this. And she's so sassy. She's just, dishing out these lines at them. And I forget what she says now, but it's really sassy. And I love it. I'm living for this moment. I just can't wait to fight her in this suit. She's so badass, and then just put her in a mech suit. Like, I just, I feel like it's so cool. Anyway. Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the mech itself is such a cool design, but it's like it's like if a sweeper
yes
had a baby with the ruby weapon.
Yeah. Or Proud Claw.
Or Proud Claw.
Its face thing, like it has like a head kind of, right? So it's like it reminds me of the evil guy from which I think it's Power Rangers, where he has that silver mask thing with the lines going down in front. It kind of reminds me of Power Ranger, the evil guy, not Rita, but like the red guy. Anyway, I was like, what?
It's been so long since I watched that. I don't quite remember the faces, but yeah.
Anyway,
some of us are old. Jeez.
yeah.
I was stoked for this. I can't wait. But yeah,
I still remember rushing home after school to watch Power Rangers.
Oh yeah. Oh, same. Yeah, same.
Boy.
And Pokemon Indigo League.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, really two quite interesting details, just for fun. In one shot, where we see her from the front and see her sitting in her seat, the two green lights on both sides look like eyes, and the controls in front of her look like a mouth. So it's kind of like this, where she sits looks like a giant head, so a weird demon or something.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. And also when she's staggered, she hammers with her right hand on this circular control unit thing as work, stop. It's also quite funny.
Where's her Shinra grunt?
Yeah. Maybe he's also sitting inside there and she rests her feet on him.
Yes. Oh my God, that would be funny.
Yeah, or just sits on him.
Do you guys, this is something that I grew up with and I don't think anyone else believes me, but do you guys, did you ever have an ottoman as a kid? It was like a footrest or a stool.
No, I didn't have one.
I think my grandparents had something similar.
Right, so that's genuinely I think that's why he's called Ottoman, because that is is a genuine
true,
thing. Like but no one believes me. They think
No, I agree with
that's
you.
perfectly true. Yeah, I remember that.
She's so evil though. He
Yeah.
doesn't even have a name. Like she probably just gave him that name because that's his purpose. He doesn't do anything. That's all he does. Because she's so evil, and
Most likely, yeah.
this is kind of turning into like Resident Evil Village, like Lady
Yeah.
whatever, Dimitrescu, like this whole sexualized thing. And that's Scarlet, right? In this series, that's her.
Yep.
You know, like you said, maybe he's inside of it and she's sitting on him. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that want Scarlet to sit on them. So you know what?
Yeah.
I'm sure this is their opportunity to be like, hey, here you go.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast is taking an odd turn.
This is Scarlet, you know? She's like a dominatrix.
That's true.
Anyway.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
People are into that. All right, so moving on here. We did get reveal of a summon.
Yeah, finally.
So I don't know how you guys say it. So I say Ramu. So I don't know if like some people say Rama. So I don't know.
Well, no. Ramu.
Yeah, that's
like
what I
Bahamut.
say.
I think in real life I would say Ramu, but I think the actual pronunciation is Rama. But don't quote me on that. I'm not.
Yeah, I think so too. But
I don't really know my Indian lore.
Well, here's what's happening is that the original, there was no voice acting, right? So I spent my entire life calling it Mako and not Mako.
Yeah,
and I've called, you know what I mean? So I guess we'll find out, but I call it Ramu.
Yeah, same.
Anyway, but yeah, looks amazing. I just love the commitment to keeping it pretty much the same as the summon in the original, you know, so he kind of grows this piece of earth underneath him, you know, like a what would you call that?
I think it's supposed to represent a mountain, but yeah.
Yes, like a mountain, and he's on top of it, and it's kind of like this thing forms, and he's on top of it, just like the original. I love it. Even the strands of his beard are kind of like sticking
majestic
out
beard, yeah.
on the sides, which is like what happens in the original game as well. Like they're just kind of flying. There's like a long piece, and then there's two pieces on the side.
Yeah, the huge mustache, yeah.
Yeah, it looks so cool. I like this design actually better than 15's. I liked Ramu in 15, but I like his design. But I feel like this one is more in tune with Final Fantasy VII and the original design as well. I think that they did a really great job designing this summon, and I think he looks awesome, like I said, and super powerful. I can't wait to use him in battle. I don't know if like what battle this was, like Ramu was being summoned in. I don't know. It looked like it was against Scarlet, but then after that, it kind of cuts to Nero. So
it's Nero. Yeah, there are two signifiers. One is the HP, because during Nero's battle they have much higher HP value. And there's one frame where you can see Nero's wing things, like those bony wing attachments in one frame.
Well, do you want to say anything else about Ramu?
Oh, yeah, maybe one thing. I was thinking about which summon it could be. Like before I watched the trailer with some CCO people, and I really wanted it to be Ramu because lightning element. I really missed a summon with a lightning element in the base game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really glad it is him.
Mm-hmm.
I also theorized about Typhon because of the wind element.
Oh, right.
We also don't have a wind element summon, but lightning element makes much more sense in terms of fighting Shinra armor stuff and sweepers and what have you. So I'm glad.
The thing that I was curious about though is I thought in one of the earlier articles, I'm not sure if it was a Famitsu article or something else, where they said that the summon material would not carry forward.
Oh, I don't remember reading that.
Or maybe it was just that the summon or the materia in general would not be carried into your save file for part 2, which is why I was surprised it was Rama. But
I think they meant that it doesn't carry over into the main game. Like you can't collect materia in the Yuffie DLC and then use it on Cloud, Barret, or the others in
Right.
the main game. I
Okay.
think that was
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay. I suppose it would. I wasn't expecting Rama for the reason that I had somehow managed to convince myself that whatever summon it was going to be would be, you only get it in DLC, you would never see it again.
Oh, okay.
So I was quite shocked that it was actually one of the main ones. But because it's one of the main ones, they have to carry it forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm. Well, I think we're gonna get more. I don't know how many you think Vyzz maximum. I think we settled on 2 or 3, right? Like in the previous episode, we talked about how many new summons we're gonna get in this DLC. I would say 2, 1 per chapter. I think that's what we settled on because it's 2 chapters long, right?
Could be. I don't even remember if they said that there are new summons or a new summon in the article. I don't remember.
I think they said summons.
Summons.
Again, I might be misremembering, but I thought it was a new summon. But
Yes.
Oh, really?
Same. I'm not quite sure.
Who knows? Everything's
Well,
on the
I
table.
think
Yeah.
I can see them giving us Typhoon as well, but I think that they just didn't show it. I'm thinking
Or
1 per
Phoenix.
chapter. Oh yeah, or Phoenix.
Because of the fourth
Yeah.
Condor minigame.
Ooh. Oh.
that was my speculation as well. So,
Oh, good. Good, yeah.
but who knows?
Well, we talked a lot about Nero, so why don't we just go ahead? It says that the ending, obviously the ending scene of Yuffie, after the plate falls, I guess, she's really upset. She's screaming out in misery. And then this kind of blew up online because it looks like there was a reflection in her eye, and there was much debate online about what she was seeing during this moment. And if you pause it, does look like it could be Kate Sith or Katshi, whatever, however you want to pronounce it. It looks like it could potentially be that scene in Remake when he's like looking over the edge after everything. And you can make it out. And, shout out to Final Fantasy V, who posted it was like a side-by-side, I think, of that scene and then the reflection. It does look very similar. A lot of people were like, oh my god, it's Vincent, but I never really saw Vincent initially. But I was like, like you said, MJ, I'm like, anything's on the table. Like, who knows? Like, I mean, like, if they want to give us Vincent in that scene, if this is the end of the DLC, and be like, that's the end or something, cliffhanger, like, who knows? Like, I would be I'm up for anything at this point. But it does, I think, make more sense with the story if it is Kate Sith that's there.
Especially in terms of the heavy Dirge of Cerberus references, because Kate Sith or Ketchi appeared there as well without the Moogle.
Yeah.
There were some sneaking missions, and he's also there without the Moogle. Yuffie was in Dirge of Cerberus, so he might have helped her escape from Deep Ground, but they were too late.
Okay.
And then Kate Sith drops to the ground, hits the ground, and then when he has his head really far down, this is where it really looks like the reflection in her eye. Like her reflection is right afterwards. First it comes the scene from the base game, and then her scene. That's how I interpret it right now.
I would agree that I would be really quite angry actually if it was Vincent.
Yeah,
because the beauty of intermission is that it doesn't actually take away from anything in the original lore. But
that's true.
But to have Vincent there would totally derail that.
Yeah.
I'm still swithering between it actually just being a bit of rock. I don't think it's Sonon.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think it's Zack.
No.
But I'm swithering between it's just everybody's making a big hoo-ha out of nothing, and it is actually just a bit of metal.
Yeah, that's also my second guess, yeah.
But there's, exactly as Vyzz says, there's every reason to, why it would be Kate Sith. Just to clarify as well, like, as a proud Scotsman, it is pronounced Ketchi in kind of Gaelic, in Scots Gaelic, but in Dirge of Cerberus, Reeve does actually say Kate Sith. So in lore already it's been established that the pronunciation is Kate Sith.
Nice.
One thing that I mentioned this to Baby Seal and Sleep Easy last night, but I haven't seen anyone else on the internet bring this up. Is that in Sector 5 in Remake, there's the whole thing that's that Sleep Easy talks about there's evidence to suggest that Avalanche HQ are based in Sector 5. The whole thing really comes to a head in Chapter 14 with Kirei sort of starts talking about Avalanche and Wutai being connected. And in Remake, through the jukebox music, you don't ever get Sid music and you don't ever get Vincent music, but you get both themes to Kate Sith and Yuffie.
In Sector 5.
And both of them are at Sector 5 station.
Yeah, true.
Which might be a little trail of breadcrumbs getting left for us, or it could be nothing at all. But in the end, if Kate Sith does actually appear in intermission, we've got Chapter 14 saying, well, our first, or Kirei actually stands up and says, we are, or the truth is that Avalanche HQ and Wutai are working together, immediately followed by the Shinra News broadcast saying that Shinra are looking into Wutai's involvement. And then, although you could see it or pick up the discs back in Chapter 8, you can actually then go to the station and find both music playing. So there's some interesting tie-ins there if you want to join the dots.
Yeah,
that's really, really good find. I think practically all jukebox music locations have some connections to something.
Yeah.
Like, of course, Tifa's theme is in her bar. Barrett's theme is also in Sector 7, but not in the bar, in the train, because he wants to do those missions which require the train to go upstairs. The Preludes is where we get the first mission. Maybe that's the connection. Hard to say. Like the rat quest. And when we can pick up the Choco-Mog materia, there's also Chocobo's music. Jukebox music playing there. The chase can be picked up right before we have to chase this stupid Apsu mischievous shout. And there's a lot more. So
one of my favorites as well. There's the Wutai theme that's right outside Don Corneo's mansion, and the the development section.
Yeah, exactly.
The Costa del Sol one, I think, is my favorite reference.
Sector 5.
And Sector 5, because there's two connections to it, and it's both of them relate to same thing with the two pieces I've already spoken about. It connects to Chapter 14, where this is where you say goodbye to Johnny.
Oh, right, yeah, that's true.
In the original game, the next time Johnny shows up is Costa del Sol. And the second one is that in The Kids Are Alright, the novel, when Kirei is first introduced, literally the first line about Kirei is that she seems to be singing to herself, and she's singing a jingle from an advert for Costa del Sol.
Okay, that's cool. That's really cool.
So like, there's really, again, everything we know from the remake suggests that the developers know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
every single thing is deliberate.
Yeah, so more likely than not, they meant to do that.
Most likely, yeah.
Well, I definitely think that the reflection in her eye does look like Kate Sith. I guess we'll find out soon. Looking back on it now, I think that I was like, oh, it could be Vincent. Like, somebody had explained it. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. Like, who knows, right? But looking closer, like at it on my computer, because I was looking at it on my phone, it looks like the screenshot of Kate Sith at the end of Remake, that scene that we got it could also, somebody had said that it looks like a crashed helicopter. So if you look closely at it, it kind of does have like this line, like rectangular line that kind of could look like a propeller of a helicopter that had crashed, which does end up happening. So it could be that somebody had said that potentially Sonnen dies, either he's on it or the helicopter crashes and then it blows up or something and debris falls on him, and then that's what she's looking at, like rubble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could be nothing.
Maybe, yeah.
Anyway, I hope it's Kate Sith. I think that's the most appropriate response, I think, to this. It could be nothing. It could be that, you know what, we're here, we're looking at a screenshot, we're, you know, deliberating about this, and ultimately it's literally nothing, which is similar to what happened when we had the girl that showed the reflection of the remember the reactor that was blowing up.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
me and Vyzz, like, we were looking at all the screenshots and going to this image, like eventually it was just her looking at it, like that was it. But you know what, that's our job. This is our job, is to kind of pick apart these screenshots and kind of piece together the information, until we actually get it and play it, right? So
by the way, I had thought earlier when I was talking to people on a CCO, it would make so much sense that Yuffie already knows Kate Sith from the Midgar segment. Why? To make their encounter with Kate Sith in the Gold Saucer so much more plausible. Like, nobody knows him. It just shows up there, hey, wanna see your fortune or something, and blah blah. And why would they take this weird, strange character with them? Well, if Yuffie knows him and he helped her out, she can say, well, he's the one that helped me out back there. He's cool.
Yeah, it's again
something along those lines.
In the original game, he forces himself into Cloud's body.
Yeah,
he can't really do that now. So, well, I suppose he could try, but that's maybe where the R rating's coming from. But sorry, I don't know where I was going with that.
No worries. But yeah, I think it would be an extremely missed opportunity if they didn't connect the two, and it would give the really out of context scene in the base game so much more context now.
Definitely.
Because before it was just a cameo in a pre-rendered scene nonetheless, which I think uses up much more budget and production than just in-game stuff. And just for a cameo in there, it is also a kind of weird place, for almost mirroring his appearance after his first body is crushed. Then he appears again while Cloud is hitting Aerith in the original game. So maybe this was kind of a nod to that. But for newcomers, it just makes no sense at all.
Yeah, that's true.
But other things like Zack, which also is kind of a little bit out of the loop, does make sense because he has more connections to Cloud. We see him drag Cloud along, and he survives, and the stamp bag and all of this. So this makes, for newcomers, at least a little bit of sense, and kind of sparks this mystery.
Yeah.
But for Kate Sith, there, like, it's just there. Like, a cat never comes up again. Nothing. So in my view, they must connect the intermission with Intergrade this way.
That makes sense. All right, guys, so we are talking about the First Soldier live stream that happened. So we did get a 2-hour live stream on Twitch from Square Enix. They showed an extended gameplay trailer that looks like there are boss battles in the First Soldier. We can see them fighting the Guard Scorpion Sweeper and also summoning Ifrit. It does look like we do have gun and shooter gameplay, also mixed with magic/casting abilities. So what they did was they went over the typical battle royale characteristics. They stated that, you know, battle against many players in a large field, primarily using guns, no respawns. Equipment is found on the field. The field shrinks over time, and it's set in Midgar, and monsters roam outside of the city. They showed major areas like the Seventh Heaven church area, Eris House, the sewers, Wall Market, Coliseum, and the train graveyard. Apparently, there are day and nighttime scenes as well. And you can see enemies that spawn on the battlefields. Monsters drop loot, so obviously, if you engage monsters, you can attack them and kill them and take the loot that drops from the monsters. They also give you experience as well, and you can use the experience to level up. And then by leveling up, it does unlock new abilities to your hero. And also, obviously, when you level up, you get more HP. So it's, killing monsters is a big part of this game. And they did go on to kind of explain that this is what helps differentiate the First Soldier from other battle royale games that are out there. If you think about Fortnite, for example, there are cosmetics that are available for you to purchase with in-game money, or you can buy this, the loot or whatever for your cosmetics. It doesn't affect the gameplay per se, but it's just skins that you can use on your character. They kind of incorporated actually these units that you can destroy. They will attack you. I'm not sure if they give drops or anything that affects the gameplay, but this is a defining factor of the First Soldier. So there are monsters that you can actually engage with. So it does provide a different element than other battle royale games that are out there. So there are materia and also other, I guess, equipment that you can actually pick up on the battlefield. So materia gives you magic attacks, special effects, for example. I think the guy that's playing it picks up FFVIIR, Blizzard, or Blizzaga. It looks like if you cast FFVIIR, it just looks like a normal like fire spell. And then we've got Blizzaga. It kind of spawns like this icicle that shoots like a turret over time and then will disintegrate once it's done. Araga actually allows you to traverse like higher parts, like on top of rooftops and stuff. So you cast it and it looks like a mini tornado, and you walk into it and it kind of bounces you up higher. It makes you fly in the air, and then you can land on top of a building. So you can get, a better advantage and be able to, I guess, use like a sniper rifle, something like that. Each one of these materia has its own individual cooldown. It does look like they had 3 of them equipped at the same time. So if you cast it, it just kind of shows like it grays out, and then it will have a bar that kind of fills up, and then it shows that it's enabled again, so you could use it again. Nomura stated that, like I said, they wanted it to be different. It's not like every other battle royale. They wanted a new experience for players. He was really strict with how they handled the Final Fantasy VII world, and he was really tough on the team actually about maintaining the consistency of Final Fantasy VII Remake world on mobile. Leveling up, like I said, unlocks new abilities. HP goes up, your powers for your existing skills go up. Like I said previously, so farming is a huge element of this game, which isn't like other battle royale games. So you can approach this game differently. So when you play it, if you're not really used to playing battle royale games, you can treat it more like an RPG game, because you can actually, farm for loot, materia, and hoard items, and focus on getting EXP so that you can level up your character to get more HP, more power, unlock more unique abilities for your character. Or you can just go in guns blazing and treat it like a shooter if that's what you want, because that's what, the gameplay that you're used to, that's what you're good at. You could also use a mix of both gameplay styles, which is what I think they had recommended. So when you first spawn into the world, you want to focus on farming, defeating monsters, gaining experience, leveling up, and then focusing on, like finding loot and equipment and materia, and then eventually battling each other. So moving on here, chocobos are also included, a maximum of 75 players per match. We also have different modes of gameplay. So there's solo, free for all, and also team deathmatch. And it looks like we've got unlockable skins, so clothing for your character. There was a character that was wearing like a chocobo sweater that was unlocked, I guess, through gameplay and achievements. There's different styles of the characters as well, so you can choose between a warrior, sorcerer, monk, or a ranger. and each one of these characters has their own specific skills. Kind of, it goes back to like the job classes, right, of the classic Final Fantasy games, as well. So right now, the closed beta test is open for Android users only until May 27th. The beta test will run from June 1st to the 7th. So unfortunately, I can't sign up. I have an iPhone, so I will definitely try this. I'm super excited to try it if they do have a closed beta test for the iOS devices. I'm sure that we'll get more info, obviously, closer to the start date of the beta. So hopefully people will be posting, footage and I guess their opinions on the game. I'm sure we'll find it and see it on Twitter, obviously. I'm not sure about actually like screen capturing and posting footage online. I don't know what the rules are if you participate like in a beta, if you're allowed to do that or not. I think so. But anyway, not too much longer.
I think based on the footage they've already shown, there's quite a lot. Obviously, there will be things in there that we've not encountered yet in the stream.
Yeah.
And this was just the Midgar map. Nomura's actually said that they're planning more maps as well.
Oh, okay.
Which I'm assuming is going to tie in with like the next part of Remake and whatnot. So it's I don't expect it to be something that they'll drop at the time of launch, because it wouldn't make any sense, because the entirety of Remake was set in Midgar.
Yeah.
And
right.
they've pulled some assets over from that. I actually must admit that I'm not a fan of Battle Royale games at all, and I'm definitely not a fan of mobile games. But having sat and watched the footage of it and seen how different it actually is in the whole leveling system, the getting materia that you have to go out farming, like I don't know if you get that in other games, but that was quite novel to me, and it really changed my opinion. But I think the biggest thing was being able to run around that map. Was just it looked so cool. There were quite a few things that confused me though. I watched the English translation stream, like the actual Square Enix stream.
Yeah, I think that's what I watched as well. They had commentators that were translating.
So that there were a few things that the Joshua had his notes in front of him, but was also translating some of the comments, but he didn't catch everything. So there's a few things that kind of Baby Seal told me about later, and that it turns out that he'd watched Audrey's stream, and Audrey was translating live. And there was a lot more that Audrey picked up than what the official Square Enix stream actually provided. So it was cool to go back on that. And one of the things that threw me to begin with was there are areas on the map that shouldn't exist, like Aerith's Church at that point does exist. It's the Material Ultimania kind of confirms that it was built round about that period. Seventh Heaven should not exist, because Crisis Core, the carpenter actually says that he's going to build it, so that's well in advance. Another example is the collapsed highway. Like if you look at the map, not very much of Sector 6 is collapsed, but there's a highway, so somehow a highway fell off the plate by itself.
And just landed.
The train graveyard's fine, because that was basically how they got goods in and out of Midgar. And so there are a few locations in there, and I thought that's really bizarre, because if they're trying to set time and place here, from a lore perspective, it's just a mess. But it turns out that Nomura actually addressed this during the live stream, because somebody asked him about it, and the answer was basically the official Square Enix stream. Joshua said they're talking about this being in a virtual reality setting, but I'm not sure what the context was. I missed the context. Like that's what he said, not what I said. And it turns out that the context was Nomura came in and clarified that this is a virtual reality setting, but the virtual reality has the capacity to anticipate future environments. So what we're seeing is assets from Final Fantasy VII Remake, but spread over multiple time periods. If that makes sense. Like Seventh Heaven is there, but it didn't exist at the same time as the rest of it. But it's there because the VR has anticipated that it will exist there in the future. So that's their explanation for why it's all over the place. Which, to be fair, means that okay, well, anything's fair game now. But I
Yeah.
couldn't get my head around that for 24 hours until I got that confirmation from Audrey. It was like, oh my god.
Um, my personal theory about that ties into the theory I proposed in the Aerith analysis video. That part 1 is basically happening in the live stream's memories, and Sephiroth and Aerith connect back, and that's why they know more and can do more stuff. And if the first soldier is the same, if it's basically just a memory of that what happened back then,
Yeah,
with the VR, then the VR, instead of producing stuff that's like happens currently the 30 years prior,
yeah,
it can actually display areas from the future because the future already happened.
yeah,
It's kind of it doesn't need to be exactly the same, because if we remember back, if we recall our own memories, they are not always 100% accurate.
yeah,
Maybe mix with other experiences and stuff from the relative future. So that's my personal interpretation of his line to make sense of it, other than just saying, "Oh, it really happened 30 years ago in the real world from Final Fantasy VII, but it can predict the future, actually predict the
yeah.
future." For me, this is not really feasible.
No, I think they've just thrown that line in there to fend off the lore enthusiasts.
Or that, yeah.
We have obviously seen like the VR section in chapter 16 where it shows
Yep.
you the building of Midgar like after it was historically a Cetran site or whatever. So there already exists the capacity of what happens if there's a glitch in the VR that shows you Midgar and 10,000 years ago at the same time. So there is that capacity,
yeah.
but I think the key factor here, and this is why from the off, I kind of knew this was going to be virtual reality because there's so much of a tie-in again to Deep Ground that
the online component, right?
Yeah, the online component was basically it calls the battle missions experiments. So the soldiers are being experimented on to test who's the strongest, but the experiments all happen in virtual reality. So the whole thing is it's just one big combat simulator. So
because otherwise they would have no soldiers left in a few weeks or so.
Basically, they would all that's why Rosso's so crazy, that Rosso does actually kill people. So that there are deaths in Deep Ground, but the vast majority of the battles that take place are virtual reality, which also explains why Deep Ground Soldier were never really seen above ground, because while you're fighting all around the world during the game and on maps that are set all around the world, like there's maps set in Wutai, there's maps set in Calm, there's maps set in Coral Desert or Corel Desert, but it's all VR. They never actually left Deep Ground. So having a game based on the battle mechanics or the history of Deep Ground, and specifically the online mode, it was almost certainly going to be VR, which is what we got. But to be fair to them, it does look really good.
Yeah, I am excited to get my hands on it and play it. I'm not, like you said, like a battle royale kind of person. I've played Fortnite a bit with my nephew. He's younger, so that's what he's into. So obviously, like with the pandemic and everything, I haven't been able to visit my family. So he will get in touch with me and ask me to play, and I've been playing. I'm really bad at it. That's pretty much my experience with battle royale games. So, but I do like the fact that, like you said, it has materia, which provides a different element. Also, you can kind of approach it like a traditional RPG as well. So you can, fight bosses and monsters. They do have the Colosseum in there as well. So you can farm XP and materia to unlock, new abilities and kind of upgrade yourself before, going into battle with other people that are on the map as well. I'm not really into shooters either, but the gunplay looks pretty good. I'm not sure. Like the thing about shooters is that it's kind of like Twitch gaming, right? So it has to be super accurate, and you have to be able to make a decision like very, very quickly. And I just don't know if this game is going to be able to have like that really fast input sensitivity between you and like what you're trying, like who you're trying to shoot at. Because to me, like that is the most annoying part about playing a shooter for me, is that like other people have faster reaction time than me. So when I'm playing, like maybe they have like a faster monitor, maybe they have a faster controller, maybe they have, I don't know, but these people who play shooters, this is what they're into, this is what they do. So for me, I'm already at a disadvantage. But for me to be able to farm and play like more of like, with melee, more like an RPG, gives me an advantage because that's the type of game that I'm more into. That's what I have experience playing. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like I have a better chance
Yeah.
at, doing well at this game than I do at playing Fortnite.
The really cool thing about this is there's no getting away from that this is a Final Fantasy game, and specifically a Final Fantasy VII game.
Hmm.
Like the inclusion of being able to ride a chocobo, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Throwing in vehicles, like
Yeah.
that's really cool. But the I think just the sheer scale of the map is massively impressive. But being able to sort of, as you touched on earlier on, using the eroga, eraga,
Yeah.
the arrow magic to sort of lift yourself up, so that like there's a mega vertical element as well.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. And
Hmm.
in particular, like I must admit again, this is just as a lore enthusiast. My favourite thing about the whole video was right at the start when they jump out the helicopter and you can see the whole thing from above. Like
Hmm.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, definitely awesome. Although myself haven't seen anything yet of this. I'm also, as you said, Mo, no, not really a fan of Battle Royale or even mobile games for that
Yeah.
matter. So I'll probably skip it, but I'll most likely just watch people play to get the feeling of what it actually is.
Well, I'm actually
Hmm.
Yeah.
surprised to hear that you said that, because there's one thing that I was going to discuss with you, that I assumed you would have noticed. And say it might just be kind of duplication of assets or whatever, but when you're watching the videos for it, Viz, keep an eye out in the massive fans in the background of the lobby, because the same fans appear during the intermission trailers. During the fight with Nero, I think. So
Oh.
there's
Oh, the fans. Okay.
there's a, I mean, again, I Captain Cynic over here. I think it is just assets being duplicated, but
Mostly, probably, yeah.
yeah, but it does suggest that the training center or the lobby for the soldiers is in the central pillar, or wherever Yuffie ends up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
That's what it looks like.
It's probably the same area where we encounter Nero. It could be.
Mhm.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much or which part should I watch? Because I don't really want to watch the whole
Oh
two
my gosh, I
hours.
don't even know where
I
that
would,
is. It was in the
yeah, I
middle.
would recommend. There's two games that they have. The first one is really cool. The first one is it starts with jumping out the plane and heading for Aerith's church.
Mm-hmm.
So the fights themselves last about 15 minutes, but the first video is a sort of every man for themselves, and the second one is a team
Yeah.
match. The team match, it shows you a bit more of Corneo's mansion and a little bit more of Wall Market, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's as revealing in terms of like landscape and lore and whatnot. I think the first video.
Mm-hmm.
So all that you need to do is like just skip over the panel talk and
Mm-hmm.
go straight to the when the gameplay starts, and then watch the first bit of gameplay. I think that would be your best option if you want to sort of cut straight to the good stuff.
Yeah, I'd probably do that, yeah. I'm not sure if I have time tomorrow, but
Hmm.
Thursday the latest, because Thursday's a day off here.
Okay.
Nice.
So probably, I hope I remember. That's always the thing with me. Oh, I'll do that in tomorrow or 2 days, and then I forget again.
All right, so moving on here, we're just going to quickly talk about a comment that Nomura had made during the live stream of the first Soldier, and it kind of revealed some information about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. So what he said was he wanted to talk a little bit about Part 2. He wasn't sure what he was allowed to say, so he actually ended up contacting Kataze, I guess, to see what he was allowed to talk about. He said that he was actually surprised that there were so many layers and levels of different departments that he had to get approval from in order to actually be able to come out and talk about part two and just kind of give an update about that. So he said it ended up being too complicated. So he was kind of stuck. And then, after all that, he just said basically it's not even worth it, essentially. So he said that what he can say is that Cloud will be running around a lot in nature and the atmosphere will be quite different from part one. So he said, I think people will really enjoy it. Development's going really great. Obviously, please wait for more information. The part two story will start right after the events of Intergrade. So we hope you enjoy Intergrade too. So we got a few things. So I'm happy that, he said that Cloud's going to be running around a lot in nature. It's kind of it's people took this online. Obviously, you know it the way it is, right? Like people on Twitter just kind of were like, oh my God, like
jumping
freaking
the
out,
gun, yeah.
saying that this was confirmation, obviously, of the world map, essentially. I did find a screenshot. I couldn't find it actually to put in the document. I was looking on Twitter. Somebody had posted something. It looked like Cloud with not trees, but other vegetation or whatever around him. So it looked like he was outside and he was walking or something, and the floor area was kind of like a checkered floor. So it was like they were just testing it for the movement or something on the world map. But I tried to find it for this. I couldn't find it. So I don't know if somebody made that or if that was taken from the live stream, but I watched it and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it was definitely not from the live stream.
Oh, okay. It might have been from actually when they were showing the development of just Remake part one way back, like way before the game actually came out. But yeah, so this is cool. We knew that development was going well. Anyway, we knew this. Do you guys have any comments about this?
I mean, it's pretty much exactly what you would expect when it's said nothing. Because with the one exception of part two being okay, it starts in Calm or it starts in Nibelheim. So now we're going to transfer you to the Chocobo farm, and now we're going to transfer you straight to the Mithril mine. Like, of course, at some point it's going to have to be in nature. So it doesn't actually tell us anything. Toriyama's comments about having a lot of inspiration from Horizon Zero Dawn was far more informative than what Nomura said. But I mean, it's as to be expected. I think I personally didn't pick up on this. It was Baby Seal that sort of pointed out that I think there's more to be looked into in terms of his wording about that part two will pick up exactly where Intergrade. So to me, that suggests that Intermission might go story-wise might go a little further, or that there's going to be an additional secret ending. Maybe not secret, maybe just an additional ending to the main story in Intergrade, which would make perfect sense.
That's interesting.
So
yeah, that's about what I'm thinking. Just an additional kind of like a Kingdom Hearts final mix kind of deal where there's an additional ending, maybe without preconditions, just after you finished it, after the credits roll, there's an additional scene or something.
Yeah. And it could be something as one of my friends, it was Alan Kenny actually, Alan of KoopaCon, who posted that he would like to see an homage to Nanaki and his cubs at the end of the original game and the start of Advent Children, like an homage to that somewhere in the Midgar Wastelands on the way to Calm. That would be a cool idea, or passing what had previously been Zach's grave, or
Mm-hmm.
there's so much. I suppose it doesn't even have to be like, well, I suppose by saying it doesn't have to be the the party themselves, it would kind of make more sense that it's the party that the story picks up straight away. My my theory that I threw out there was, what if the secret ending is Cloud's flashback about the truck on the way to Nibelheim? So it's him and Sephiroth in the back of the truck. And then part two starts with you're actually like, it doesn't even show you Calm. Part two starts with the Nibelheim flashback.
Yeah, the Nibelheim flashback is, I think, since I started thinking about how they would split up, was the thought of part two starts off right in the back of this truck. Nothing else. Yeah. You start the game and it starts there.
Because that would make sense in terms, like, if you're playing through the whole thing, you can, as from the storytelling perspective, you can hit all the story beats from Cloud's backstory. Like, we've already established Sephiroth, so we don't need to establish who Sephiroth is again. So exactly. So all we're doing is telling the story. So the whole section, like in the original game, we've got the entire section of they get to Calm, they go up, Cloud starts his backstory, and you've got this dialogue box with Tifa where she says nothing. But you can bypass all of that now because you've already established who Sephiroth is. You're adding far more detail to the flashback, so you can just play out the flashback and then go. Cloud doesn't even have to have told the party about this. So you can actually tell the full story to the player, allow the player to live through that, and then start the Calm section, which then means you don't have to address Tifa hiding her feelings about what Cloud's just said.
Although I think this is a pretty important part of this whole development between Tifa and Cloud, and that there's something a little bit weird, because otherwise it just take everything as truth.
Well, I guess that's very true, and obviously they do address it when they first arrive in Junon, or the sort of
that's
Junon.
that as well. Yeah.
But there is the thing right at the beginning of chapter 3 when Cloud says it's been 5 years, and Tifa's like, yeah.
Yes,
and they just move straight on. So it's a perfect way to address it. That for those who don't know the story, it's just a scene. It makes no difference. But for those that are familiar with the story, basically you're highlighting that Tifa is questioning it without actually questioning it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, the little subtleties that they've used throughout Remake have just been astonishingly good. So I would anticipate that they'll move forward with that. But I think if they are going to have Cloud tell that story, there absolutely has to be a focus on Tifa being like, right, it's now time to acknowledge that there's something really bizarre going on here.
Yes, for sure. And what also came to mind is kind of to interlace the flashback and the journey to Calm. Like, you start off with the back of the truck, and the first battle is the dragon. Maybe some other smaller ones first. Maybe they expand this part. But then it cuts back to the party entering Calm, or walking towards Calm, get into the inn. And then when they're in, then it continues in Nibelheim itself.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't start with just running into a city. But it also gives you the context that Cloud is telling the story before you get into the meat of it.
Yeah.
Because if you play through the whole segment first, even with the especially since there are interjections with Cloud and the others who make some comments. Oh, did you go into my house? Yes, I did. For example, then you need to establish this beforehand, so that the player knows, oh, it's a flashback. Well, you pretty much know anyway, but that that Cloud is telling the others about this while they're staying in Calm at the inn. so that there is context.
There are a few different ways that they can establish that it's a flashback. Like colorization is one way. For sure, yeah. At the beginning of, or not at the beginning of chapter 9, at the very tail end of chapter 8, when Cloud has the flashback to being at home, he's actually wearing both shoulder pauldrons. So a visual representation of this is not the same Cloud is for him, his outfit to be slightly different.
Yeah, I hope he has both shoulder pauldrons, because this would really clash with the scene you just mentioned before.
Definitely, and that's one of my biggest gripes about the entire compilation, that we never get an explanation for where the spiked one comes from.
Yeah, it really looks like he has just put both on top of each other and screwed them together. That's what it looks like to me. But why?
I'm really quite... So hopefully if we do end up in a situation where we go down the Zack timeline route, that there'll be an Easter egg in there somewhere about how or where this came from. Because it's pissed me off for years.
Yeah.
Well, we might not ever get an answer.
Maybe, yeah.
Don't even joke about that.
And it will continue to piss you off for the rest of your existence.
I'm not playing part 2 if that's how it's going to be.
Well, you can cancel the pre-order when you notice.
God.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. It's the only reason I'm playing Remake is to get this answer.
Exactly.
All right, guys, so moving on here, MJ, we are going to talk a little bit about your book, Norse Myths That Inspired Final Fantasy VII. So I know that, Vyzz, you had finished the book today, and you had some comments that you wanted to make about the book, and also some questions that you had for MJ.
Some comments, yes. So but I already gave you some, like that it's actually awesome, and I learned a lot about Norse mythology, like above what you see in pop culture and some other games. Which is it's really, really good. You go so much in detail into all those different the poetic Edda, the prose Edda, and the I forgot already how it's called. The other book from this others, a Swedish or Norwegian guy.
Snorri Sturluson.
Exactly.
He wrote the prose Edda. The poetic Edda is basically just a collection of earlier poems.
Okay. Yeah. I really love that you always reference the actual origins of those stories and where all those characters appear in which, and sometimes it's not even quite clear what actually happens, or the researchers are not quite sure of this or that version. So it's not just some references. Oh, it's this looks like Odin, or this one is probably Hel or something. It's really, really in depth. So anyone interested in Norse mythology and Final Fantasy VII this is just a must, because you learn a lot. Also about compilation, everything about Before Crisis and there's a Cerberus online mode is all in there summarized.
And well, thank you for that. And the reason that I did end up going, one of the things that I didn't realize, and it's this is going to not annoy me as well, but this is something I'm going to wonder about for the rest of my life, that I only took an interest in Norse mythology maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I had a sort of base understanding of it, and I knew that like Odin, the summon Odin was from Viking lore and whatnot. But when I started researching Norse mythology, I found that I was really interested in it. And the more I looked into it, the more I was like, right, I recognise some of these names from Final Fantasy VII. So I thought, well, it's, there's obviously a connection there. That's okay, that's cool. And it wasn't until I started writing this book that I discovered that, obviously there had been inspiration there, but I didn't know just how deep a love and a passion for mythology that Nojima has. That came as a massive surprise, and going away and finding out that prior to joining Square, he'd actually written a Greek mythology series called Glory of Heracles. Heracles
Okay.
being the Greek equivalent of Hercules. So
Mhm.
there's it had a lot of background, and when interviewed about the matter for one of the re-releases of Glory of Heracles years later, they asked him if he could explore any other type of mythology, what would it be? And his answer was Norse mythology. So I don't think it's
Hmm.
a surprise that when he was given the sort of scenario writer gig for Final Fantasy VII, that he did incorporate all that.
Mhm.
Because my understanding at the time had been like I knew the original or the early Final Fantasy games, like their mythos and the bestiaries were based on Dungeons and Dragons, and I just
Hmm.
assumed that continued the whole way. And I suppose to an extent it did, but
Sahagin, for example.
yeah, exactly. There are so many enemy types in particular found within the Final Fantasy games that quite directly trace back to Dungeons and Dragons. But when we get to 7 in particular, when Nojima takes over as lead writer from Sakaguchi, it changes. Like he's no longer basing mythology on Dungeons and Dragons mythology. He's actually now basing it on real
Mhm.
world mythology, and
Hmm.
that's something that I found really really interesting because it changes the dynamic of what's actually going on. So I will forever wonder whether my interest or like whether the comparison between Final Fantasy VII and Norse mythology came up just by chance through my research of Norse mythology, or if my interest in Norse mythology was subliminally planted there by
Probably, yeah,
Nojima's
probably the
writing.
latter.
So
Yeah.
it's when I started looking at it, as I said earlier on, there's so much content that
Yeah.
you can pull from, and I personally find the whole thing fascinating. Um, and there's Najima wrote every single entry in the compilation except Dirge of Cerberus, and
Right. Yeah.
Dirge of Cerberus, although I speak about it a couple of times during the book, it doesn't have a huge amount of Norse mythology at all, but it does have quite a lot of Greek mythology,
Mhm.
which I'm going to bring up in my new book that I'm hoping to get crowdfunded shortly. So, in short, basically, Dirge of Cerberus is a rerun of some of the story of Heracles or Hercules,
Mm.
and late towards the end of it, he descends into the underworld and things like that.
I
So
love it.
it's yeah, there's an enormous amount of parallels going on. So I'm just really this is or the Final Fantasy VII and Norse mythology were two passions of mine. Being able to combine them has just been a dream come true.
Mhm.
But not only that, to find that there's actually an enormous amount of people out there who are also interested in that and learning about that has just blown me away. So for everyone that has picked up a copy of the book, thank you so much. It just
Mhm.
it basically validates everything that I've worked towards.
Hmm. It for sure does. Yeah, and I'm also it's really interesting how everyone I saw on Twitter post about the book is just always high praises.
Mhm.
I'm not much on Twitter anyway, but those few things I saw, it's always praise. It's really, I think you hit the nerve there.
Yeah, and and it's the feedback has been phenomenal. I wouldn't, for the most part, I wouldn't expect someone to say, right, this was a 1-star book. I'm now going to attack you for it over Twitter, but so you'd probably expect that those people would just put the book in the bin and walk away. But as much as I don't really want to blow my own trumpet, like the ratings on Amazon just now kind of speak for themselves. Like
Mm.
it's kind of as of hold on a second, I'll check. As of right now in the US, there's been 118 ratings, and
Mhm.
it's 90% of which have been 5-star.
Cool.
Mhm.
That's
So
really
that's
something.
you know that's far better than I was ever anticipating. So I'm massively grateful to Kaylee for the artwork as well, but also to Kira Ravens, who's my editor, who is
Mhm.
yeah, she's just an absolute godsend. She did a phenomenal job on this, and it wouldn't be as neat and tidy as it is without her. So I'm hugely appreciative of Kira's input as well.
Um, I also have a few questions, and for time's sake, let's try to keep the answers short.
Sure, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's hard because I know if I would answer, it would be hard. But let's try anyway. So I think the amount of research and time you had to pour into this book was quite gargantuan, right?
Quite a lot, yeah.
Yeah. What was the time frame of the whole process from when you started until you published the book?
Well, that's actually quite a difficult one to answer. Some of the content had been written in the form of blogs
Oh, okay.
previously.
Oh, right, you
So
mentioned that.
I
Yeah.
was able just to reformat those or kind of amalgamate them into chapters. Originally, the plan had been to finish the book and release it in time for remake or roundabout remake.
Mm-hmm.
But in this sort of lead up to it, I think we were a little bit behind schedule, and then COVID started to get pretty serious. So there was a good maybe 2 months before the potential release of the book where we thought, right, there's I happened to work for the British government, and we'd sort of been given warnings in advance of, like, you know, there's the potential that we might have to work from home for a little while and all this sort of stuff. So I knew that it might not be a good idea, and I also knew that if I hadn't published by the time Remake was launched, I wasn't going to put aside playing Remake just to get this out. So
Yeah.
I was slightly behind. Kaylee, the artist, was slightly behind, and she owns her own tattoo business, so I can't really put any demands on her from that respect. So we made the decision maybe about 6 weeks before Remake was due to sorry, I'm talking about Remake. I'm talking about the original launch, the sort of March 3rd launch.
Yeah.
So we basically just called a halt on it. So it was like a good 4 or 5 months where I didn't do very much work at all, and then threw everything I had at it. Sort of maybe May, June time last year, and got the whole thing finished. So I would say it was, in terms of actually writing content, there was maybe somewhere between 6 and 9 months. But again, it's difficult to put my finger on it because it was actually so spread out and different formats to begin with.
Yeah. I always I'm astonished about how much research and time goes into those things. Even in my own analyses, sometimes I just pour hours and hours into looking over footage, checking this out, writing some things down, then noticing something and going back to check or search online for certain answers I don't quite remember and stuff. And I can only imagine how difficult it is for digging up all this Norse mythology.
It could get quite complicated, and there were times where
Yeah.
I'd write entire sections only to discover that I'd misinterpreted something, or
Oh boy.
Oh no.
or that the source wasn't quite accurate, or things like that. It could be quite frustrating at times, but because it was such a passion project, I didn't really, the motivation to complete it never really went away. It got quite stressful towards the end after I'd actually set a release date. It got quite stressful, but yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I did actually have a pretty firm background in Norse mythology anyway. I've been doing an original project for a few years, a kind of superhero fantasy novel project, which is
cool.
it taps really heavily into Norse mythology as well, which is where the original interest came from a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't as if I had to start from scratch on either subject. Like, I actually had a pretty good understanding on both to begin with. And after that, it was really just a case of getting all my thoughts down and reformatting them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that certainly saved a lot of time, I guess. Which is always good to repurpose old works into newer works, to not have to start from scratch every time.
It was definitely a good thing to have, and a good reference point as well.
Yeah, exactly. Then I've written down some more remake specific questions, but I tried to condense them into kind of one question.
Sure.
So basically, expectations for future parts relating to mythological connections, specifically Odin and Nibelheim, Shinra Manor, because that one's huge in terms of connections. And what in general would you expect in future installments, like depending on Norse myths? I know this was a lot, but I'll just let you answer like you want.
I personally wouldn't expect there to be too many changes from what already exists in the compilation lore. There are a few things like I would expect the Midgard Zolom to be correctly named to Midgard
Yes.
and I would hope that there would maybe be a mythological reference in there somewhere, either highlighting the connection with Thor, so that there's like a thunderstorm going on at that time, or that the Midgard Storm, as part of its its move set, has like a poison based thing.
Oh, right, yeah. Because
it
doesn't have it right now.
It doesn't have it just now, so it's like it's got beta, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does actually have, is that fire elemental? Right?
Yes, fire to all.
Which I think is, same thing. I didn't put this in the book because it's, maybe too out there, but Midgardsorm and Thor finally fight at Ragnarok, which is the apocalypse, and the apocalypse ends when the 9 worlds are burned. So there's,
I see.
So there's a kind of vague connection there. But Midgardsorm, I would like to see, maybe a reference to Midgard in terms of like the Norse mythology is that it encircles the world, that it lies at the bottom of the ocean, but it's so big that it can bite its own tail after it's encircled the world. So maybe something like that, that at some point during the swamps it bites its own tail or whatever.
What I'd like is that you start walking through the swamp and then just see parts of a huge snake in certain areas in the distance, maybe, or maybe you walk over something and then notice it's actually a part of a snake that disappears into the swamp again. And it just at some point, really massive, and at some point it just maybe see the head or parts of the head in the distance, or it plops up from beneath, and it's so huge. Then
I think would be really cool is if they're walking through and there's like maybe a little natural passageway or corridor, and it turns out that they're walking through the inside of the snakeskin.
Or that,
that would
also
be cool.
Yeah.
So like something like that, I think would be really, really great to add in. The Odin one is, there's a sort of running theme. I've spoken about this in sort of previous articles that Odin in Final Fantasy III is in the catacombs beneath the sort of fortified sister city of Saronia. So there's a connection there to the like a castle. In Final Fantasy IV, he's in the library beneath. Is it Baron Castle? And
I think so.
Final Fantasy V, he is a secret boss in a location called Baal Castle. And in Final Fantasy VI, he's in the Ancient Castle. So there's no castle as such. The fortified town of Calm is relatively similar to a castle, but in terms of a historic location, that a lot has gone on. Shinra Manor sort of fits that theme.
Kind of, yeah.
But the whole idea behind this is that there's actually a connection. I think I do actually mention it in the book about Saronia in Final Fantasy III has the king has his army fighting each other every day to the death. Like he splits the army in two and has them fight to the death every day, which is directly lifted from Norse mythology and in Valhalla. Baron Castle, it's just another castle. Baal Castle in Final Fantasy V the Baal bit in one of the games, I don't know if it's a Game Boy Advanced, was anglicised as Val Castle. So you've got Valhalla connection again.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's this running theme of you connect the dots. There's Valhalla references going on in these castles, and then by extension to Shinra Manor. So, like the Vincent Valentine connection as well. When the safe opens, you get the Odin materia and the basement key. The Odin materia obviously has Odin in it, and the basement key has Vincent Valentine, which I've got an entire chapter in the book dedicated to how.
Yes, you do.
How Vincent's character, and specifically the Goliath Beast character, is a berserker, like what the actual berserkers of Viking society were. So there's quite a lot of connections, and obviously that's based in the town of Nibelheim, which is lifted from Niflheim, the Norse world of mist or fog or cloud. If you want to use the
home of clouds, yeah.
So there's a multitude of connections there. The big one actually for me, that there's the whole thing in the remake, which I've kind of said this quite a few times, that what I love about the ending of Remake is that none of us expected to be sitting here thinking, I don't know what's going to happen next. Because that's crazy that, this is, 23, 24-year-old game.
Yeah.
That we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen next after all this time. So it's and say what you want about the Whispers, as a sort of story vehicle, it was a fantastic way of getting us to that point. But what it has thrown up is a lot of people asking the question: will Aerith live or will she die? Now, I think based on Norse mythology and based on Najima being a big fan of Norse mythology, my personal take on this is that she is going to die. And the reason for that is the entire point of Norse or Viking culture was that you cannot escape fate.
Oh, the fatalism part of their culture.
You can change the details, but if you're fated to die on the battlefield, which battle you die in might change, which method of killing might change, who kills you might change, but you'll still die on the battlefield.
But you will still die.
So
yeah,
I think based on that, the answer to the question is Aerith will die.
Yeah, that's about my take on the whole rest of the remake as well. That all the main stations are still there. And maybe some details will change even within those events, especially between the events. But the main beats will still be there up until the end, and then the very end is different, like beyond Meteor Fall. But until then, it's practically the same in broad strokes, but with so many small changes, like in the first game.
Even then, like the entire Ragnarok is the story of a fire giant.
Right, Surtur.
Surtur arrives, he has a fight with all the gods, and at the end he burns the universe, but the universe is reborn. So Ragnarok is not about the destruction of the universe, it's about rebirth. Which is, if you want to look at the end of the original Final Fantasy VII. You've got Meteor. It arrives. We don't actually know what happens, and the next thing is 500 years later. Nanaki's looking over this reclaimed Midgar.
Yeah.
You know, the rebirth. The planet has sort of retaken control of itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Which effectively is exactly what, or how it's described in Norse mythology about the world is reborn. There's, you know, it specifies that there's an eagle flying over the skies and that there's green grass and waterfalls and what have you. So that there are actually quite a few similarities there. One of the things that I would like to see is a few more references to the Ragnarok story. And you know, whether or not that's tied into Meteor or whatever. But there's something that I didn't go into in the book, and there's the specific reason for it I'll come back to in a second. But in Viking society, there were seeresses called FFVIIR, and it's connected to a specific type of magic called Cedar. So Odin was the sort of male god practitioner of this, and the seeresses themselves, it was a type of shamanism, and the idea was that you interact with the spiritual plane to understand and shape the future. You can't change fate. So like I was saying earlier on, if you're fated to die on the battlefield, you will always die on the battlefield. But the manner in which you die can be changed. Like when you die, who it is that kills you, the weapon that kills you, all that sort of stuff. Those details can be changed. So that's what the shaping of the future, where that comes into play. So think of it like fate is the destination and future is the journey and how you get there.
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
so this is what the FFVIIR or these Viking seeresses were, right? So we've got a situation here where there's the main scenario writer is very heavily interested in Norse mythology. Remake itself is about fighting against destiny and shaping the future.
Yep.
So if you then consider that Aerith herself is a seeress, as a Cetra, she can interact with the spiritual plane to see the future. So there's quite a few parallels there. But the reason I didn't include it in the book is that for it to work, it specifically has to be that Aerith is being able to see the future and make decisions to change that. There's obviously the counter argument that future Aerith, or Aerith from the live stream, or post-Advent Children Aerith, has come back and is giving her this information, or guiding her, or possessing her, or whatever way you want to argue it.
Yeah, exactly.
In which case, the CRS element of it doesn't apply. So I didn't include it for that reason, but there's still I think Remake has the potential to kind of say, well, actually, it's not future Aerith coming back, it is genuinely this Aerith can interpret the live stream and see the future that way.
If it was a new game, I would agree. However, the original game exists, and there she cannot predict the future.
So,
and we go through the same story again, and she suddenly can see the future. There must be something else at play. That's my
I agree.
main reasoning.
I'm totally with you on that one. I don't think she is seeing the future on her own. I think someone is giving her this information.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a lot going on in terms of the connections that can be made, and some of them are wild and speculatory, and some of them are, once they're presented, you kind of think, right, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So hopefully the book is able to do that for the readers. That was the intention anyway.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Really good. Yeah. I also got a new view onto certain characters and how they placed in the story, so to speak, or in the chain of events and the lores. And also one interesting or basically almost a no-brainer connection is Genova and Hell,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense. But then when you compare a few other characteristics, then I can also see Genoa being connected to Loki because of the shape-shifting
Yeah.
and the three children, Sephiroth, Genesis, and then
That's
Geo.
true. Yeah.
And if you then switch it around and see Sephiroth as Hell, not gender-wise, but just from the from concept side, Sephiroth is kind of the yes, it's Genova that kind of initiates the reunion instinctively, but Sephiroth is the one who wants the black materia, the black materia and all this other thing. So he's kind of the one sitting in the underworld, in the live stream, in the afterlife, and directing his army of whatever undead or something in the game. It's the black robed people towards a goal. So there's also this parallel I saw, which is pretty interesting. So you can interpret it this way, but also the other way.
No, I'm totally with you on that one. And even if you look at Loveless and Genesis's thing about like the wanderer, the prisoner, and the hero, the Genesis considers himself the prisoner, which was the whole thing about FFVIIR, that was tied up on an island.
Oh right, yeah, that's true, yeah.
Which effectively leaves Angel to be a giant snake, but I'm sure we'll find a parallel there somewhere.
Parallel I can see is that he's the one that's mostly connected to the human world, like the most grounded one.
True.
Maybe, but that's the only parallel I could see. And the Traveler, and Sephiroth is the hero. Maybe not. I don't know. But that's I'm not sure if you both have seen one of the newer videos of Final Fantasy Peasant, where he talks about Loveless, and there he also proposes that it's not like this character is the Traveler, this is the prisoner, and this is the hero, but each character, not just those three, but also our main hero, our main cast, and the others, all go through a journey. They start off as a prisoner, then they become the Traveler, and eventually emerge the hero.
It's a good theory, yeah.
Interesting.
And fits pretty well, as he explains. And the interesting thing is, I didn't really, mostly didn't really talk or think about this. But while watching his video, when I saw those three words above each other, on top of each other, I thought, well, what about each one of them goes through all those stages? And lo and behold, a few minutes later, he talks about this. It's really cool. Yeah.
I like Pez's ideas. They're so off the wall, but they're really interesting, really well thought out.
Definitely, yeah.
They're very entertaining. The Final Fantasy 15 stuff that he came up with, which actually ended up being way more interesting than what we got. And I would just like, Square Enix, you need to hire him, because honestly, like when that game, I was waiting for it to come out, and he was doing all of these like lore videos and talking about everything, just making connections and trying to make the story make sense, because when it first came out, it was like a broken story. It did make sense, but anyway, he made so much sense of it, and then he went further, and I was just like, I am buying everything that you are selling right now. Like, I was all for it. I'm like, follow, yes, please give me more of this. And eventually it just ended up being way better than what we ended up getting. And I'm just like, I was so disappointed, because I was like, I wish that it was what he was saying it was.
For 15 specifically, there was so much missing and so much glossed over. It was a shame.
Yeah.
Because it had potential.
Yeah. I've got a really bizarre relationship with 15 that I haven't actually played it all the way through, but I've met so much of the cast, and I know so much of the game as a result of that. Like the only one of the main characters I'd never met was Gladio, the actor of Gladio.
Right.
Oh right, yeah. He's pretty an elusive one. I gather. Yeah.
So yeah, it's It's been really bizarre. Like just through CooperCon, just being so heavily invested in the game despite never playing the game.
Yeah.
It's a really strange feeling, I guess.
I didn't replay it after everything was patched and they released all of the extra content. I played it when it first came out, beginning to end, and I played the DLC episodes and I enjoyed those, but I didn't really want to go back and replay it again, beginning to end after
the
they added all
Royal
the extra.
pack,
It was the Royal Edition that I played, and I found that a challenge as well. So I can't imagine what it must have been like at the beginning.
It was very difficult to figure out what was happening, but you know, like I said, with peasant stuff, I was able to kind of like understand what was happening and then kind of form my own understanding and reason for like why I was doing what I was doing and why the characters were doing what they were doing and all this stuff. So anyway, it ended up making sense for me inside of my mind anyway by the time I finished it, but I wasn't going back to it after after I finished it. I had sunk so much time into it that I was just like, and there was more games coming out and I had waited for that game for so long and it wasn't Versus 13, which is what I wanted. It was never going to be that. So I was just happy that it came out and it was a fun experience for what it was.
For sure, yeah.
I could appreciate that fact that they were able to, like Tabata was able to actually salvage it and release a game. You know, like I was happy about that. But yeah,
he did the best he could, I guess.
With what he had, yeah.
With what he had, yeah.
But I'll always wonder what Versus 13 would have been, and maybe we'll end up getting that with
Verum Rex. Yeah.
Or with Loveless, maybe we'll get some kind of like a musical theater video game spin-off after Remake is completed.
Yeah, who knows?
And it'll be like Versus 13 as a musical, which is what ultimately he wanted, but they were like, no, you are not making that.
That was fun.
Why not? I feel like it would be wildly popular, especially now with all of these different types of genres of games, you know, that are coming out. So
all right, so one little last question. I was always wondering, because you found so many parallels and allusions and just so many connections between Norse myths and Final Fantasy VII story and lore. Do you think that all of it was deliberate and you found it, or that maybe half was deliberate and the other one was kind of luck that it fit? Or maybe mostly luck and Nojima just used the main parallels, the main connections, and the rest just happened to unfold the same, because storytelling tends to just repeat and repeat over the ages, so that two people can write stories completely separate from each other, and if they have a certain the same basis, the stories might flow into the same direction even without knowing about each other. What do you think?
I would maybe place it about 50-50. 50 deliberate, 50 just pure chance. You know, I do recognise in the book that an awful lot of it is interpretation, an awful lot of it is speculation. There are some things that are very clearly lifted directly from mythology.
For sure,
you know, like
Gold Saucer.
Yeah, I mean, the Gold Saucer one is one. The Midgard being the centre of the sort of political world, the economic world, like that's not coincidence. Nibelheim and how Nibelheim looks, and that it is the core of a lot of things that started in the association with death, like that's not an accident. So there are many, you know, again, other than the Zolem's name, like its actual location or its proximity to Midgar, that's not an accident, sort of thing.
Definitely,
And I think because all these things had been introduced, like specifically using Fenrir to represent Cloud's grief, and quite a lot of associations there, that, you know, when that was introduced in Advent Children, that's not an accident either. The association with sort of Genesis and the apples of rejuvenation. The apples of rejuvenation are a common motif across mythology. Like you could basically change a few names and write exactly the same thing about Greek mythology.
Yeah.
So that that's certainly not exclusive. So there are quite a few things in there that I don't think are anywhere near a mistake, because Najima and Katase in particular, like a lot of the very early story was surrounded or based around Nibelheim, based around Midgar. So you can tell from that that's where the foundation was. The foundation was, I'm going to lift information from Norse mythology. But I think that there's quite a lot. Like I said, the whole thing about Odin and the connection to castles, like that's not an isolated incident or an isolated case. There are so many recurring themes or recurring characters or recurring monsters, and these are all associated with particular things, like across the franchise. And like I touched on earlier, that all goes back, and a lot of it's derived from Dungeons and Dragons. But Dungeons and Dragons itself is derived from global mythology. So while it's it's one step removed when it gets to Final Fantasy, it still does have its origins in real world mythology. So I think Najima in particular, in his interests, took that idea and expanded on it, and expanded on this idea of Final Fantasy is already established as having all these connections to real world mythology, but we're going to build on that. Like, and an example, again, I touched on, he's got a background in Greek mythology. It's not like the Greek origin story, or one of the main Greek origin stories is the story of how the Titans came into existence with Uranus and Gaia. Right? So it's no coincidence that the meteorite that struck the planet, that's Gaia's cliff.
Right.
And the meteorite, it goes on to, there are sort of loose connections where the meteorite was carrying Genova, so you've then got this malevolent calamity from the sky. Uranus is the sky god, who was up until the point where he was castrated, he was a villain in Gaia's eyes. And you then end up in a situation where Uranus is swallowing his offspring, and they're kind of buried deep inside, or he's Gaia gives birth to like the Hecatoncheires or the Cyclopes, and they have to go deep into the underworld and all this sort of stuff. That's a reference to weapon.
Right, yeah.
So like I'm saying, we're in a situation where you can clearly see Greek mythology coming into play. You can clearly see Norse mythology coming into play. So it's not. It can't possibly be. All of it is just a coincidence. It can't possibly be that, particularly because Najima himself came from a company where he had just made 3 games specifically about Greek mythology. Like, so in answer to your question, yes, a lot of it is luck, a lot of it is me interpreting things, and a lot of it is me speculating. But there is a very core grounding of Najima himself has this background in mythology, which he has implemented into Final Fantasy VII. And the reason Final Fantasy VII is so different from the rest of them is that up until that point, the mythology is based on Dungeons and Dragons. But 7 changed that.
It went directly for the source, yeah.
Yeah. So that's my feelings on why the book works. Is that there is actually so much of it that you can directly prove was lifted from mythology. So the rest of it, if the core elements were lifted directly from mythology, then everything else that seems to be connected on the balance of probabilities might actually be connected.
I also have a feeling that is very much influenced automatically without sometimes even knowing that. That's probably why so many connections still work, while maybe some looser connections or not so obvious connections might not have been intentional from the start. So yeah, I think it's really cool, because this is also great for theorists and analyzers and lore people, because then you can see the connections much better and have or receive a better understanding of how everything works together, maybe even make better predictions based on that.
I mean, like, and it never really went away from Najima either. Like, the Najima wrote the Fabula Nova Crystallis mythos.
Oh, right, that's true. Yeah.
Which covers the 13 trilogy, type 0 and 15. And you can see, you know, in 13 in particular, you just have to give the example of, like, Lightning, her Eidolon is Odin. And you know, after after the events of Final Fantasy 13, she ends up in the sort of the space between the afterlife and the real world called Valhalla.
Yes.
You know, and you know, there's so much, or even the entire point of Fang and Vanille at the end, you know, combining to be Ragnarok.
Ragnarok.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So even if
crazy.
those elements themselves, or even if the Ragnarok and the Odin elements weren't written by Nojima, the fact that they've introduced Valhalla as, you know, this, you know, it's such a central piece of the or the Final Fantasy 13 lore. You know, it never went away. Or Niflheimer showing up again in Final Fantasy 15, and as you're arriving in Niflheimer, it's surrounded by frost and mist because of the Shiva connection. You know, like, that's
Yep.
You know, there are so many things that are still present that are directly connected to actual mythology, not the Dungeons and Dragons stuff.
It's so fascinating.
So that's my take. That's my take. I think I think a lot of it is deliberate.
Yeah, that's really good take, and it makes him much more. It makes him seem or look much more competent.
Yeah.
Rather than just stumbling through mythology and then just throwing in some parallels, and he got lucky that everything fits. No, it's probably deliberate.
Yeah, that's my dream is actually to sit down with him one day and say, look, I wrote this entire book about your ideas. Is any of it correct?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it can make a circle or a cross where it's right or wrong.
But I mean, like,
that would be awesome.
One example that is a kind of weird idea is, like, do you know the whole thing about Gotterdammerung?
Kind of, yeah.
So in Final Fantasy VII, the original game, Cloud's ultimate weapon is the Ultima weapon, but that's kind of a secret weapon. You have to kind of defeat the ultimate weapon to get that one. So if you don't go on that side quest, the last sword that you pick up, the most powerful sword that you pick up, is Ragnarok.
Yeah. Oh, I remember now. Right, it's this one. Yeah.
So Ragnarok comes from Norse mythology, where it's the Norse apocalypse. At the end of Remake, if you fight Pride and Joy Prototype and defeat it, the best weapon that you can get, or the best item you can get in the full game, is Gotterdammerung. Now, Gotterdammerung means Twilight of the Gods. And it is lifted from the fourth part of Richard Wagner's operatic saga, or cycle, which is based on an earlier Germanic tale called the Nibelungenlied. The Nibelungenlied is directly lifted from the Norse sagas. So Ragnarok means Doom of the Gods. Gotterdammerung is a variant of the story that was turned into a 19th century opera called Twilight of the Gods, but it follows the same beats.
I see, yeah.
Right? So Ragnarok has been remade into Gotterdammerung. And the last item you get in Remake is named after Cloud's, with the exception of the Ultima weapon, with Cloud's strongest sword. And the defeat of Proud Claude at the end of Remake. The end of the OG. So Pride and Joy prototype is the prototype of Proud Claude. You defeat Proud Claude, you get Ragnarok. You defeat Pride and Joy prototype, you get Gotterdammerung. In the remake of the original. So
yeah, it's pretty nice parallels there.
So we're now in a situation of, that's not a coincidence. That's very, very deliberate.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Therefore, they still know about these connections with Norse mythology. So if that is present in the game, you have to assume that the understanding or the overall understanding of Norse mythology is still present in the writing.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is why I think it will come into play further down the line. And obviously when part 2 drops and they still call the Zolom, that will completely derail my argument.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's too much. There's too much in there. And it's very specific for it to be coincidence.
For sure, yeah. And I'm glad, because otherwise this book wouldn't exist. Probably.
Who knows? Who knows?
All right, so that concludes today's episode of the Reunion Podcast. I just want to take a second to say thank you so much, MJ, for joining us today for the podcast. It was so incredible getting to know you as a writer, as a person, and also to be able to talk to you about, Final Fantasy VII Remake, the final trailer, and also kind of pick your brains about any theories that, you might kind of be subscribing to at the moment in time. So I just want to say thank you so much. It was so awesome having you here. So thank you again for taking the time out to sit with myself and Vyzz today.
That's my pleasure. I'm delighted to be here. As I said, I've been a massive fan of the show for a long time. It's so good to be able to have this conversation, to discuss this with you guys, and yeah, I'm massively grateful for being invited.
You're welcome. It was really great to have you on, definitely. It was extremely fun conversation. Learned a little bit more now. Learned a little bit of your coming to be where you are now. Was also very interesting. Yeah, in general, I also always love to directly speak to people that I only briefly talk to or get to know in the community. So this podcast is really an extremely good opportunity for me to do that. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm just working on my stuff. Maybe check on the CCO Discord a little bit and watch other people create content. That's about it. But actually being involved in the community now with Kai, the Reunion podcast here, and now already the second time last Saturday with Schrödinger's Baby Seal, and probably more in the future, more to come.
Wink, wink.
He said he likes having me on, so I'm pretty sure I'll be invited back on. And you as well, Mo, because I think he also likes having you on.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. You should have he should have us both on there for some lore stuff.
I really, really enjoy speaking with Baby Seal, so I'm
yes, definitely, it's really
I would
joy,
jump at the chance to be back on again.
All right, guys, so if you have any ideas for upcoming episodes, you can write us at thereunionpodcast@gmail.com. That's thereunionpodcast@gmail.com. Go ahead and join our Discord server. So we do have a Discord server, and the link is provided in the description of each episode. So all you have to do is go ahead and click on that and you will be automatically added to our Discord server to continue the conversation about this incredible game. And why wouldn't you want to do that? And also, why aren't you already doing that? We do have a Twitter profile. It's at reunion_podcast. We do have a Facebook page. It's Reunion Podcast. And we do have a YouTube channel as well. It's The Reunion Podcast. And we do post all of our audio-only episodes to our YouTube channel as well for you guys to listen to. I just want to remind everybody that we are doing an amazing giveaway right now. We are giving away a digital deluxe edition of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade to one lucky listener. So here's what you have to do. Go follow us on Twitter at reunion_podcast, retweet or quote tweet the original giveaway posting that's actually pinned to the top of our page. And then also the winner will be drawn the day before Intergrade releases, so on June the 9th. So be sure to check out our socials on June 9th for the announcement of the winner. We are also giving away a signed copy of MJ Gallagher's book, Norse Myths, that inspired Final Fantasy VII to one lucky listener, and it's the exact same process as our digital deluxe edition giveaway. So follow us on Twitter, retweet, quote tweet, and we will announce the winner in 2 weeks from the date that this episode is released. All right, Vyzz, so did you want to go ahead and drop your socials for Cosmo Canyon Observatory?
Yeah, for sure. On YouTube, main channel is Cosmo Canyon Observatory, of course. We have a Discord that's called the same. There's a link on our YouTube page in every video, and also in the bio of our Twitter account, which is at cc_observatory.
Perfect. And MJ, did you want to go ahead and drop your socials as well so people can check you out?
Sure. You'll find me on Twitter at FFVII Novels, all one word. Anyone who's looking for some additional content, most of which is available totally free. All of my novels, with the exception of the Norse Myths one, is also available to download totally free off my Patreon account, which is patreon.com/MJ Gallagher, and some of my YouTube videos as well, which is just youtube.com/MJ Gallagher. And Norse Myths that inspired Final Fantasy VII is available in paperback and ebook on Amazon worldwide, and very soon we'll be dropping on as a hardback as well.
Nice. All right, so once again, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, Mo. It was incredible having you here, and I really enjoyed our conversation today, so thank you so much.
Likewise, guys. Take care.
Yeah, take care, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.